It's item 1 on the agenda is the apologies. I received apologies from Jane Shaw, Councillor Jane Shaw, Councillor Ian Grayson, Councillor Andy Holdsworth, Councillor Claire McGinty, and Councillor Tom Bailey. Yes, Councillor.
Councillor Neera is running late and is unlikely to make this.
Councillor Murphy's running late.
So, sorry, Councillor.
Apologies from Councillor Dr. Scargill, Councillor McGinty and Councillor Lilly.
Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is members are asked to declare any registrable or non-registrable interests and the relevant dispensations which have been granted in relation to any matters appearing on the agenda. Those members should also complete the card and return it to the Democratic Services officers. Now we're on to item 3, which is the freedom of the Borough of North Tyneside. Can I invite the elected Mayor Karen Clark to move the report?
Thank you, Chair. This report informs the Council of a nomination received for Dame Norma Redfern to be awarded the Freedom of the Borough. As mentioned in the nomination form, Dame Norma was elected Mayor for 12 years. Dame Norma has not only demonstrated extraordinary leadership, but has also brought transformative change to the borough, far beyond what many could have imagined. During her tenure, Dame Norma stabilised the council through some of the most challenging financial times in recent history, ensuring that essential services continued to thrive. Her leadership attracted thousands of jobs and numerous businesses to North Tyneside, boosting the local economy and providing new opportunities for the community. Her work in social care is particularly noteworthy. Under her guidance, social care teams in North Tyneside were not only transformed, but became outstanding, earning multiple awards for their excellence. This is a testament to her unwavering commitment to improving the lives of the most vulnerable in the borough. Dame Norma also led the way in regeneration, spearheading widely successful and award-winning schemes that revitalised key areas of the borough, enhancing the quality of life for all residents. In addition, Dame Norma's leadership ensured that North Tyneside maintained its vital public services at a time when many other councils were forced to make cuts. While libraries, leisure centres and parks were being closed everywhere, Dame Norma worked tirelessly to retain these essential community assets. Under her stewardship, the borough's parks and beaches have also received prestigious green and blue flags, recognising their outstanding quality and the care taken to preserve them for future generations. Furthermore, her leadership paved the way for North Tyneside's inclusion in the regional devolution deal, a really significant milestone that promises to bring even more opportunities to the area in the future. Through her vision, dedication and tireless efforts, Dame Norma Redfern has left an indelible mark on North Tyneside. Her legacy of one is progress, prosperity and pride for the borough, and it's only fitting that she be recognised with the Freedom of North Tyneside for her exceptional service and contributions. Dame Norma really did make North Tyneside a great place to live, work and visit. The nomination has been to Overview and Scrutiny Coordination and Finance Committee, who have recommended that the nomination be submitted to an extraordinary council meeting for approval. Council should be reminded that for the nomination to be approved, 2/3 of the members present in the chamber need to agree to the recommendation. I'd like to propose Council approve the recommendation as set out in paragraph 1.2 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Have you got a seconder for that? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Norma was born in Wallsend and attended Wallsend Grammar School. She then attended Newcastle University and spent a 30-year career in teaching, winning many accolades for her work introducing breakfast clubs in West Walker, and bringing adult education in the school to improve the life chances of the parents of those children as well. Norma was elected in 2004 to the Riverside Ward, and 2005, when John Harrison became mayor, he appointed as cabinet member for children and young people. There she rolled out breakfast clubs, worked to rebuild schools, and champion children's education. In 2013, Norma was elected mayor of North Tyneside, which was a remarkable feat on over 50% of the vote in the first round. From a personal point of view, I first met Norma in 2006 as a member of the Youth Council, where she told me off for being too political, and thus began nearly 2 decades of being told off by Norma. Norma was elected in 2013 and immediately instilled a culture of relentless focus on delivery for our residents. Rather than dither, delay, and the disastrous outsourcing of the last regime, Norma got on with the job. Under her leadership, we retained libraries and leisure centres and parks in-house, when many authorities decided to outsource them because of austerity. We had record levels of schools being good or outstanding. Our children's service and youth justice services outstanding. Delivered a poverty intervention fund and our unmatched welfare offer. Adult social care teams good. Record investment in the roads and pavements. Invested in our environmental services. Delivered financial stability and investment despite our £470 million cut from our budget. We brought about devolution powers from Celtic government, which under Mayor Clark has allowed us to invest in things like moving the Ferryland and North Shields and bringing the Energy Academy to Wallsend. Finally, Dame Redfern brought about regeneration to our area, transforming Whitley Bay and starting regeneration of Wallsend, the North West and North Shields, transferring the Dome from derelict to award-winning. Many political careers end in failure, but Norma is the exception to this rule, retiring undefeated after winning 3 consecutive terms with over 50% of the vote, delivering generational change in the borough. I am delighted to second Dame Norma Redfern's nomination for Freedom of the Borough.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Have we covered any members' questions, comments? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. The Conservative Group will be supporting this motion. We would always support granting someone freedom of our borough for their valuable contribution to public life if we felt it was appropriate and deserved, regardless of their political affiliations. Whilst I don't want to sour this moment in any way, I would not be being honest if I did not mention my disappointment that when I approached the party opposite to discuss awarding our first female elected mayor, Linda Arkley, the same honour, I was told it would not be supported by the Labour group. I really did think we were all better than that in here. I'd like to acknowledge the support of our former Chief Executive, Paul Hanson, who encouraged our group to work with officers, some of them were here tonight, to dedicate a small memorial garden in Linda's memory in Time Out Park as a place to remember her work and legacy. We'll be supporting the motion tonight to award Dame Norma Freedom of the Borough. We on this side park our political differences and acknowledge her time spent as elected mayor of North Tyneside and thank her for her service to the borough.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, point of personal explanation, please. We were approached on this side about former Mayor Linda Arkley. Sadly, Linda Arkley had passed away at the time, and the advice was we couldn't award this honour to Linda after she had passed away. So that is why we didn't proceed to take that forward, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Buttons.
Chair, I'd just like to seek clarification from the monitoring officer, because that wasn't my understanding of the advice that was given with regards to posthumously giving freedom of the borough out.
My recollection of the advice that I gave in relation to that was that the freedom of the borough couldn't be awarded posthumously.
Right, thank you. Is there any more questions, comments? Sorry.
Thank you,
Councillor.
Chair. I first met Norma Redfern in 2008 when I was 14 years old. I was attending an event for young people at the parks in North Shields, and Norma was there in her capacity as cabinet member for children and young people. Before leaving, Norma made sure that she had walked around the sports hall at the parks and talked to each and every young person. I must admit, I can't remember what we talked about, but I remember that she took the time and made the effort to speak to me. Chair, I could spend the entirety of this meeting talking about what Norma has achieved and what sort of politician she is. But that memory 17 years ago, for me, is indicative of who Norma Redfern is as a person. Norma has spent her life helping others as a teacher, as a head teacher, as a councillor, as a cabinet member, and for the last 12 years as the elected mayor of North Tyneside. At a time in her life when she could have been at home with her feet up, watching the television with a nice cup of tea, enjoying a more relaxed and easier life, she continued to commit herself to others, putting in the time and the effort to help the most important people in all of this, the residents of North Tyneside. Chair, I'm proud to call Norma Redfern a friend, and I'm proud to support her nomination for Freedom of the Borough of North Tyneside. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no more questions or comments. I'd like to move to the vote, please. That's 51-4, so that is unanimous. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you. That does conclude the business of this meeting, so I'll see you back here at 6 o'clock. Thank you. Please be seated. Right, just before we do start the meeting, I've been told by technical that the problems we had earlier was because phones were joining in, if you like. Anyway, I've been explained if we put it on airplane mode, so if we just pretend we're going on our holiday days, then we can, that'll get away with the problem. So if you are going to use your phones, if you'd switch into airplane mode, and then with a bit of luck, we'll not have any more interruptions. Thank you. So item 1 on the agenda this evening is public questions. I have 7 valid questions that have been received from members of the public, and they are to be asked at this meeting. So the first question is from Mr. Lee. Is he in attendance? Mr. Lee? So if Mr. Lee is not in attendance, we'll have to take that as read. Councillor Graham, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question, Mr. Lee. We work very successfully in partnership with Northumbria Police and the Officer of the Police and Crime Commissioner in North Tyneside. However, police funding and resource is a matter for the PCC. I'm clear that there is no spying on the community. What we do have are very successful partnership initiatives within community protection with Northumbria Police and others to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour in North Tyneside, including the well-established Operation Coast Watch and Project Shield. This includes regular patrols and visible neighbourhood policing on foot rather than just in vehicles in Wallsend and North Shields town centres and the coastline and surrounding areas, including the transport. We are endeavouring through this partnership to keep our residents safe. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. As Mr. Lee wasn't in attendance, obviously there won't be a supplementary. So I go on to question 2, which is from Mr. Rides. Is he in attendance, Mr. Rides? Mr. Rides, would you like to ask a question, or would you like to take it?
It's straightforward, actually. I stood here over a year ago, 18th of July 2024, asking about the pledge of the government to double the size of the cooperative sector in nationwide. And I asked what the council intended to do on this matter within North Tyneside. Given that a year has passed, and I was told at the time that the government had only been in position a few weeks, and therefore it was too early for results to have taken shape. A year has now passed. Can I ask what progress has been made in doubling the size of the cooperative sector in North Tyneside?
Thank you, Mr. Rides. Councillor Carl Johnson, I believe you're answering this
Thank you,
one.
Chair. North Tyneside has in place strong support for cooperatives. This includes the Business Factory, our business support programme, which provides support for cooperatives. Last financial year, the Business Factory supported 25 socially trading organisations to grow and prosper, and are continue to provide support to do so. In addition, there is access to UK-wide cooperative support, formerly known as Hive, which offers support for new and existing cooperatives. Regional initiatives like the Flexible Social Finance and the Culture and Creative Investment Programme are open to cooperative models based in North Tyneside. Our own North Shields 800 programme encourages cooperative participation in heritage and cultural activities. However, there is no currently available data that shows the number of existing cooperators in the borough, but work is underway to determine the size and the sector and its growth potential.
Mr. Rice, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Well, I'm quite surprised to hear that there's no data, because if you want to get somewhere, surely you start by working out exactly where you are.
Councillor Johnson, would you like to respond?
I think we are trying to gather the data, determine the size and its growth potential. That's exactly what we are currently doing.
Thank you. We now have question number 3, which is from Ms Davis. Is Ms Davis in attendance? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Like to ask a question, I would like to take it as read.
Have I got the right? Didn't have the microphone on. Yes, can I ask the question? The Labour government has announced that they will not allow any further elected mayors to be established other than for the combined authorities. Will North Tyneside consider taking steps to scrap the elected mayor, bring it in line with other councils in the North East Combined Authority?
Councillor Mayor Clark.
Certainly, yes. Thank you for your question. The English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, introduced to Parliament on the 10th of July 2025, proposes the abolition of the committee system and the prevention of the creation of any new local authority mayors. However, the bill and guidance published alongside the bill makes it clear that there is no intention to abolish the existing 13 local authority mayoralities. Those local authorities, such as North Tyneside Council, with existing mayors, will have the option to continue with an elected mayor or transition to a leader and cabinet model. Under both the current and the proposed law, any change to North Tyneside Council's current form of governance would require a referendum. The outcome of the referendum would have to show clear support for any proposed change before it could be implemented. Under the current law, a referendum cannot be held within 10 years of the previous referendum being held. This means that a referendum could not be held until 2026 at the earliest. The bill proposes that this period be reduced to 4 years, but in practical terms, taking into account the time it will take for the bill to receive royal assent, the earliest that a referendum could be held if the authority wished to change its governance arrangements to a leader and cabinet model would also be 2026. Thank you.
Yeah. Ms Davis, have you got a supplementary question?
Yes. So if there was a petition with enough names, would that mean that the council would take that on board and have a referendum on the mayoral?
Mayor Clark, would you respond, please?
Yes, thank you. Yes, if a public petition is brought to council and it meets the eligibility criteria, then that would be discussed by full council and it would be a decision of full council to take it to referendum or not, as the case may be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now at question 4, which is Ms Kirkham. Is Ms Kirkham in attendance? Again, would you like to take ask the question, or would you like to take it as read?
I'll ask the question. I regularly use the wagonways in Shire Moor for exercise, either walking or cycling. I often see people riding motorcycles at dangerous speeds with little respect for other users. I've also seen motorcyclists on the road near me in Shire Moor without crash helmets or registration plates, and again driving at speed. I've spoken to the police, who tell me that they're working with the council on this, and they've explained that the police need evidence to prosecute which means they either have to catch people breaking the law or get statements from people who've seen them with vehicle registration and descriptions of bikes and riders. That's hard enough, but then the police have to give them a first warning before they can prosecute and scrap the vehicle. They then have to catch them a second time. So they informed me that one of the shortcuts to this is to have a notice, a written warning on the land that people are riding on in the form of a notice board or a sign, and then they can prosecute them as soon as they catch them. So they need to catch them once. So the police are working with the council to get more signage up on the council, including wagonways. And I'd like to see when we can see those signs going up on the wagonways in Shymore.
Councillor Graham, I believe you're answering this one.
I am indeed. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this question, Ms Kirkham. Mounting signage in the areas of concern would be beneficial to raise awareness of the powers the police can use. The Council's Community Protection Team will be arranging this in partnership with the police and are aiming to have signs erected by the end of September. North Tyneside Council and the Community Protection Team have been working closely with Northumbria Police to tackle the issue of motorbike, e-bike antisocial behaviour. The police currently are delivering a number of operations, including Capio and Apollo, under Section 59 of the Police Reform Act 2002. This allows officers of the authority to tackle antisocial use of vehicles, including motorbikes, which are often at the centre of persistent complaints in our communities. The power allows officers to issue warnings in the first instance, and if the behaviour continues, allows for the seizure of vehicles involved. Section 59 is a crucial enforcement tool in addressing what is often reckless and dangerous behaviour to remove the offending vehicles. Section 59 states the driver must have been warned about vehicle antisocial behaviour use within the previous 12 months, so they would need to demonstrate that the rider or driver has been warned personally. Thank you for your question.
Ms Kirkham, have you got a supplementary question?
I was going to ask about other measures, but I think that's been answered in that question and the first question.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further question.
Thank you very much. That means we move on to question 5, which is from Ms Hardwick. Ms Hardwick in the building. Ken, would you like to take the question as read, or would you like to ask the question? Sorry.
I'd like to ask a question, please. Is that okay? Unfortunately, North Tyneside Council had to resubmit its major application to the Heritage Lottery to fund the NS 800 celebrations. It's now almost 10 months since the programme of activities and events was promised, and it's only just about to start. Youth, cultural organisations, businesses, schools, communities, project leaders and residents in North Shields feel they've been let down. Unlike other councils in our region and throughout the UK, North Tyneside doesn't have a permanent arts team. Such a team could build long-term relationships with these communities, developing the skills and knowledge to write more successful funding bids, as well as involving communities and creative practitioners. In light of this NS 800 disappointment, would North Tyneside Council agree to meet with residents and creatives living and working in North Shields to consider how to improve this situation?
Thank you. Councillor Colin Johnson, I believe you're answering this one.
Thank you, Chair. North Shields 800 is a year-long celebration of the past, present and future of the town, which brought together more than 75 heritage and cultural organisations, as well as businesses, residents and schools. We are now more than halfway through the year, and thousands of residents and hundreds of school children have already taken part in community-led events, including the North Shields 800 launch, the Parade of Sale and Blessing to Fleet, Stones Throw Music Festival, a community day at North Shields Football Club, picnic in the park, and a Heritage Day at the Lenskill Centre, to name a few. Over the next few months, activity will be delivered to celebrate the town's rich heritage, including murals, which you can see popping up around the town now, an exhibition at the Lowlights, a textile map, as well as photography, films, animations and exhibitions, and a theatre celebrating the famous people from North Shields. Border has recently launched a small community grant scheme that will enable more community groups and freelancers to access funding to deliver North Shields 800 projects. We have successfully secured funding from the Heritage Lottery Fund, North East Combined Authority, Historic England, and corporate sponsorship, alongside funding from the council we provide directly. Other projects have found their own funding to deliver North Shields 800 activity throughout the year, and it's been good to see how the community have gotten on board with North Shields 800. We'll always meet with any residents and community groups that want to meet with the council to discuss how we can make our area a better place to live, work and visit.
Thank you. So, would you have a supplementary question?
I didn't quite catch that last sentence. Was that saying that you will be considering meeting with community groups, etc., to try and make sure that we don't have delays for anything in the future?
What I said, well, I think we've always been willing to meet with community groups, have throughout all of this process. We've worked directly with the community, and we'll always continue to be happy to work with community groups and meet with community groups. So if anybody wants to meet with us to talk about this, just get in touch. We'll be happy to meet.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We now have question 6. Mr. Osborne, I don't believe is in attendance for what I'm being told. So would Councillor Calderon, would you like to take that question?
Thank you, Chair. The Beacon Shopping Centre is key to supporting the wider regeneration of North Shields. The new owner is passionate about North Shields and has planned to reinvest in the Beacon Centre to ensure it has a long-term future, focused on retail, leisure and health. The owner is in commercial discussions with potential occupiers, and once these have concluded, the owner of the Beacon Centre will make the plans public and will be holding public consultation later this summer.
Thank you. That takes us to question 7, which is Ms. Remfrey. Is Ms. Remfrey in here? No. Councillor Graham, I believe you're taking this one.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question, Penny. The Council is committed to working to tackle the causes of climate change and working to ensure the borough is prepared for the potential harmful impacts caused by a changing and warming and wetter climate. The current local plan was adopted in 2017 before the Council's 2019 declaration of a climate emergency and adoption of carbon reduction targets. We expect work on the new local plan to respond to our own local priorities and help the Council achieve the goals set out within the Net Zero Action Plan. The climate scorecard produced by Climate Emergency UK is not considered an accurate assessment of the Council's successes in reducing emissions and facing the challenge of climate change. And as last year, we have questions on the methodology of this study. We challenged 19 of the questions we did not deem to be accurate. The Council's carbon footprint is down by 59%, and the borough's carbon footprint is down by 50%. The climate scorecard does not reflect this. North Tyneside good progress is not reflected in this climate scorecard and has a number of inaccuracies, including, for instance, the Council does not have a tree planting target and management plan, and we do. The Council does not encourage reduction in single-use plastics, and we do. We were penalised for not having a clean air zone when our air quality does not warrant one. In contrast, for the second year running, the Council received an A grade from the Carbon Disclosure Project. Just 150 of the 1,000 cities assessed across the world received an A grade. Councils placed alongside cities such as New York, Paris, Melbourne and Tokyo as just 112 authorities worldwide achieving this award. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That concludes the questions. So we are now on item 2, which is apologies. I've received apologies from Councillors Jane Shaw, Ian Grayson, Andy Holsworth, Claire McGinty and Tom Bailey. Anyone else?
Councillor Lilly.
Thank you. That takes us to item 3, declarations of interest. Members are asked to declare any registrable or non-registrable interests. and any relevant dispensations which have been granted in relation to any matters appearing on the agenda. Those members should also complete the card and return it to the Democratic Services Officer. Sorry.
Chair, I have interest in motion 1, so I need to leave the meeting.
Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Chair. I have an interest in motion 3. I am a member of the Royal Town Planning Institute and I have signed a letter regarding these changes, so I'll leave the meeting.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes, Chair, I've got a non-registrable personal interest in the petition. I've taken advice and I've been told that I'm okay to stay in the meeting.
Right, Councillor Tully.
Motion number 7, I own a business which may be impacted by the changes, but I do not believe this is so significant to impact the ability to decide on this as advised by the monitoring officer.
Thank you. Mr. Tully.
Registrable interest in motion 6. I've taken advice made in the meeting.
Thank you. Next item is item 4, the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of May 2025. Can I ask the council to confirm those minutes? Now, at item 5, which is a petition submitted on behalf of the students of St Thomas More Mental Health Action Team. Can I invite Reverend Mason to present his petition, please? And you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Chair, Madam Mayor, officers and elected members. My name is Simon Mason and I am a leader in Tyne and Wear Citizens, an alliance of 38 institutions, including schools, faith groups, universities and charities. We are part of Citizens UK, which has over 600 member institutions across England and Wales. In 2018, Tyne and Wear Citizens established a Citizens Commission on Mental Health in the North East. Based on testimony from students at St Thomas More Catholic High School, who highlighted the need for and benefits of counselling in schools, one of the Commission's outcomes was to establish a counselling programme in schools and campaign for its regional and national expansion. Currently, 1 in 4 children and young people suffers from a diagnosable mental health condition. Some will and do benefit from the support provided by mental health support teams, which is called Connect here in North Shields, while others will and do require services from the Children and Adolescent Mental Health Service. Many others will fall between these groups, which we identify as the missing middle, whose needs are often overlooked. We have met with Sir Alan Campbell on numerous occasions, and over the past 2 years, we have continued to meet with him and Mayor Kim McGuinness to discuss this issue. Nationally, we successfully campaigned to include counselling provision in schools within the Labour manifesto, and it is now government policy. In a meeting with Sir Alan Campbell in June 2024, he told us that it was inspirational as ever to meet pupils from St Cuthbert's Primary School and St Thomas More Catholic High School, who, through their campaigning on mental health in schools, are now influencing national policy. This is excellent news for young people's lives, especially those struggling with mental health at school. As Bridget Phillipson, the Secretary of State for Education, said at a Tyne and Wear Assembly meeting this month, you have shone a national light on a really important issue. You have been doing some great work. Although we had hoped the government would extend the rollout of mental health counselling professionals in schools and raise their minimum qualification to diploma level 4 instead of level 3, we still recognise the government's commitment. In 2024, at the Tyne and Wear Citizens Mayoral Assembly, Kim McGuinness agreed to fund a pilot scheme providing school-based counselling for all Year 9 pupils across the North East Combined Authority, aiming to tackle the negative impact of school absenteeism on GCSE and A-level results. The petition that triggered this full council debate was signed by 2,000 constituents in North Shields. These signatures were gathered by students from St Thomas More Catholic High School and Marden High School. One student, a Year 8 pupil called Martin, even convinced women having their hair shampooed and set at a local hairdresser to sign the petition. The issue of children and young people's mental health and the availability of school-based counselling remains a top priority for students at these two local schools, for everyone who signed the petition, as well as their family and friends who live and vote here in North Tyneside. Chair, we urge the Council to discuss the mental health of children and young people and support the proposed pilot, which would provide counselling in all schools, including those currently without access to counselling, as a solution to the issue of school absenteeism affecting GCSE and A-level results. We also ask that this matter be referred to Councillor Stephen Phillips, the Cabinet Member for Education, Inclusion and Skills. Finally, we request that the Mayor, Karen Clark, as the Council's representative on the North East Council Combined Authority Cabinet, support Mayor Kim McGuinness's proposal to pilot school-based counselling for Year 9 pupils across the North East Combined Authority. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Reverend Mason. You went a little bit over the time there, but that's fine. We'll live with that. Thank you. Members are reminded, though, in line with the Constitution, the Council has 15 minutes to debate this petition, and I believe Councillor Phillips, you are starting the debate.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Reverend, as well. And I'd also, just before I start, I'd like to ask if you could just pass on me warmest congratulations to the students who've been involved in this, because it's a really good piece of work and it's a really important piece of work. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. The authority welcomes petitions and recognises that they are an important way for people to bring their concerns to the authority's attention. Pupils at St Thomas More Catholic High School have submitted a petition to the authority in line with the authority's petition scheme. As the petition has received over 2,000 valid signatures, in accordance with the scheme, the petition is to be debated at this full meeting of full council. The petition itself relates to the provision of counselling support in schools, both within the borough and across England as a whole, and specifically for Year 9 pupils. The petition makes the following statement: there is an educational attainment gap between the North East and the rest of the country, with our region bottom of the national performance table. Evidence shows that having counsellors based within schools improves academic and behavioural outcomes. We, the undersigned, petition North Tyneside Council to support a schools-based counselling SBC pilot through the North East Combined Authority, to welcome the pilot within North Tyneside and to have its NECA representative meet before Christmas 2024 with St Thomas More Catholic High School in the borough, which is a proven SBC provision. In North Tyneside, educational attainment is broadly in line with national averages. In GCSE and Attainment 8, which provides a snapshot of overall academic performance across 8 GCSE level qualifications, overall attainment in the borough aligned closely with the national average, while in Key Stage 2, our children outperformed the latest national average by 3%. Over the past few years, there have been significant developments in the range of mental health and emotional wellbeing support for children and young people in the borough, with specific support in place for schools to access to help their students. The report sets out a range of services in North Tyneside that are available to support the mental health and emotional wellbeing needs of our children and young people, currently including our Early Help Emotional Wellbeing Team, Connect Mental Health Support Team and Hive Team. Specialist support is also available via CAMS. The report also outlines information from NECA regarding the mental health support it currently funds in schools. The petition goes on to state, we gained a commitment from Mayor Kim McGuinness, who committed to paying for a pilot programme for all schools in the North East Combined Authority. However, NECA has explained that in terms of a mayoral commitment to a pilot scheme, while the mayor agrees that a pilot might be worthwhile, a funding commitment to this has not been made at this stage. I therefore recommend we refer the petition to the Cabinet for consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Do you have a seconder for that, Councillor Phillips?
Second reserve the right to speak, Chair.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Wallace?
Thank you, Chairman. I commend the involvement of the pupils at St Thomas More School in actively participating in local democracy. Too many people of all ages just leave it to others to do something, so I do think their actions are commendable. With regard to the petition itself and the request for counsellors within the schools, I note that new guidance has very recently been issued to schools amid escalating concerns over the number of young people who are being signed off sick, and we are facing as a country a worklessness crisis amongst young people. Teachers, I understand from this new guidance, will be told to avoid encouraging pupils to self-diagnose feelings which are entirely normal, as coming under the headings of anxiety and depression. And social media has sadly got an enormous role to play here. Bridget Phillipson has said that for too many children today, their understanding of how to manage their mood and regulate their emotions is coming from social media rather than from their parents, teachers or trained professionals. And in the trained professionals, I imagine that she's including counsellors. Further, I read, children will be taught that worrying and feeling down are not mental health conditions, that there must be a differentiation between serious mental health conditions which do need treatment and ordinary feelings of anxiety and concern, worrying about exams, worrying about friends or lack of friends and so forth. This seems very sensible to me because there does seem to have been an over-medicalisation of such concerns. I'm not in any way minimising the concerns which the young people do have, and I'm sure that we can all remember having some pretty unpleasant times as we went through school ourselves. But indeed, unfortunately, worrying, feeling upset or concerned is simply a normal part of growing up, and indeed often a normal part of adult life too. So I do hope that the counsellors will implement this new advice and guidance, because it's very important that our children do get the help they need to cope with these kind of feelings as they attend school, pursue their studies and then move on to work or college. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Wallace and we support the aims of this petition in entirety. I'd like to extend our thanks to the students and all of the petitioners for raising such an important issue. I think there's just one slight concern that we have, which is that it gets referred to Cabinet and then nothing comes of it. So we'd like to move an amendment to the recommendation that a report on this and the progress of this comes back to this chamber before the end of the municipal year.
You have a seconder for that? Does anyone want to speak to the amendment? No, in that case, put the Councillor Phillips, you have the right to reply.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Basically, I think we're all in agreement that the aims and intentions of this petition are absolutely spot on, so I hope we can all support it. Obviously, how it's done, I was told constitutionally that it had to go to Cabinet, but I'm quite happy for it to come back and with a report back to full council explaining what Cabinet's done with it. Absolutely fine with that. Thank you.
If that's acceptable to the councillors, then that's what we do. We can send it to the Cabinet with a view to come back to full council. Is that agreed? Thank you. Now go on to item 6. This is the amendment to the programme of the meetings. And again, I believe it's Councillor Johnson that you're going to move this. No, sorry, Councillor Mayclaw.
Thank you, Chair. Council has requested to approve the following changes to the council meeting and 2 subcommittees in September 2025. The council meeting to be moved from the 25th of September to the 18th of September, and caring subcommittee to be moved from the 25th of September to the 18th of September. These changes have been discussed with the chairs of those committees affected. I would like to move the recommendations as set out in paragraph 1.2 of the report. Thank you.
Yeah, I second for that.
Second reserved right to speak, Chair.
There's no indication that anyone wants to speak, so we'll just move to the vote. Thank you. That moves us on to item 7, which is the return of the by-election. Can I ask Mayor Karen Clark to move the report, please?
Thank you. It's just really to note the return of the councillors elected at the Killingworth Ward and Long Benton and Benton Ward by-elections on the 2nd of July. And for Killingworth Ward, Brian Smith was duly elected. For Long Benton and Benton Ward, Brian MacDonald was duly elected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. If we go on to item 8, which is the allocation of seats to the political parties. And again, I believe it's Councillor Mayor. Sorry, Karen Clark, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the details are all contained within the report. I would just like to move the recommendations outlined in 1.2 of the report. Thank you.
And again, do you have a second for that?
Second reserved right to speak, Chair.
Councillor Bowens.
Thank you, Chair. We'd just like to put on record our disappointment that the updated allocation of seats does not include an allocation for either of our non-grouped members. While we might disagree with them politically, I think it is right that they've been put here by their residents and they should have an input in our committee system. I think we've all acknowledged in the past the contributions that some of our independent members have made. So we'd like to put that on record from our side.
Yeah, just for the benefit of all members, and I think I've set it out in the report, non-grouped councillors do not attract allocations of political seats in law. So the only time that members who are non-grouped that receive an allocation of seats is where there are spares. When I run the calculation, it creates spares. So it's a question on this occasion, the numbers were extremely neat and it didn't drive any spares out. So on this occasion, there are no spares to allocate to the non-group members. So it's a matter of law.
Thank you. Is there any more comments? In that case, can I move to the vote? Right, that brings on item 9, which is the motions. We have 7 valid motions this evening, and as you appreciate, they could take some time, so I would like people to try and not go over the same subjects over and over again. If we can keep to the subject of the matter, I'm sure the meeting will move a lot more smoothly. So with that, can I invite Councillor Carl Johnson to move the first motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. In this group, we've always aimed to support all residents, and the Labour and this group and the Mayor have in recent years increased our welfare initiatives to be among the strongest of any council in the country. School meal vouchers, winter coat, school uniform vouchers, benefit maximisation campaigns, housing and council tax support, personalised welfare assistance, individual support into employment via our Working Well hubs, and collaboration with the voluntary and community sector on a network of social supermarkets, pantries and affordable food clubs. Chairing this group, when our government makes a decision we don't agree with, we will always stand up for the residents of North Tyneside who put us here to represent them. And that in this instance is what we're doing. We absolutely welcome the £3.8 billion the Labour government is putting forward to help more people into work locally. Getting people into better jobs is core of Labour values, and we welcome that money, and we're already getting on the job in North Tyneside, having for the last number of years now had Working Well hubs in North Tyneside that have helped people, thousands of people, get back to work. We welcome the government's decision to remove the PIP elements from the recent welfare reform bill and commit to not making any changes until after the Thames review has been carried out. We have an absolute commitment to support welfare, and it remains as firm as it was when it was established after the Second World War to combat poverty, hardship, inequalities and disabled people. We also recommend, we welcome, and this has been lost in lots of the commentary on this, that the standard allowance of universal credit will increase significantly over the course of this Parliament, which will benefit 23,534 North Tyneside residents. But we do have some concerns about the remaining health elements of universal credit in the bill that have not changed. So it's absolutely right that this council lets the government know our concerns and we stand up for our people where we think it might disproportionately impact them. So Chair, I don't think this motion should be political. These people require our support, and I hope everybody across the chamber will be support us in this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Have we got a seconder for that motion?
Chair, second that and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. I now invite members to speak to the motion. Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair. We agree with many of the aims in this motion, and we should absolutely be helping get our residents into work and off benefits. However, we can't support a motion that asks the government to spend yet more on welfare, specifically in regards to the health element of universal credit. It's deeply ironic that should this motion have been brought to a parliamentary Labour Party meeting and not this chamber, councillors Johnson, Samuel and Cruddas would have all by now had the whip withdrawn for disagreeing with their government. We won't be supporting this motion. We can't support a motion that asks us to spend more on welfare when Labour have put the national finances in the state they're in, and we'll be voting against this motion.
Does anyone else want to speak to the motion? Sorry, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. I note within the early part of this motion, there's a reference to money from the government to help more people into work. I would suggest that the steps taken by the Chancellor imposing employers' national insurance contributions increase is having exactly the opposite effect. And indeed, we're seeing that now in employment figures, or unemployment figures rather. Turning wider to the motion, it ignores the need for welfare reform, because unless it is reformed, we are heading as a country for a huge economic crisis. The need for reform has been obvious for a long time, yet it is clear that the government has made no comprehensive plans whatsoever, despite years in opposition, to deal with it. And even such plans as it did have, it can't get through, despite having a massive majority in the House of Commons. Instead of a considered long-term plan, it's tried immediate and unannounced changes like the removal of the winter fuel payments and the PIP changes, which have caused rebellion within their own ranks. It's very worrying that if the Prime Minister and the Cabinet cannot deal with an obvious long-term challenge, what will happen when they are faced with unexpected disasters or difficulties? Welfare expenditure in this country is soaring. The OBR predicts a 26% rise during the course of this Parliament. Within that, disability benefits are predicted to rise from 66 billion to 97 billion. That's a 50% rise, Chairman, in 5 years. The economy, meanwhile, is forecast to grow by a very tiny amount. Manifestly, we cannot afford the current welfare expenditure. The country is borrowing more and more. The Chancellor has increased the national debt, and that's quite apart from the need for increased defence expenditure in the difficult world we find ourselves in. Face-to-face assessments must urgently be reintroduced as part of reform of disability benefits. Certainly, more people need to be helped into work. I definitely agree with that part of the motion, but it is unsustainable that so many people are now in receipt of benefits, and this cannot be right to allow more people to have more in benefits than some earn on the minimum wage. I cannot support this motion, Chairman, because it ignores the need for wholesale long-term reform. Thank you.
Does anyone else speak to the motion? In that case, can I ask the, sorry, Councillor Hannah Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. As a councillor for Cheltenham Persimmon, along with my colleagues, I'm sure, I've always been proud to how our council have provided support for those who need it. Through funding, we've provided support to pay for school uniform, worked with Citizens Advice Bureau to make sure people are receiving benefits they are entitled to, gave support to residents when paying their council tax or rent, developed the Working Well hubs, which have proven incredibly successful in getting people back into work and are now used as a model nationally, and work with food banks or multi-banks such as the Bay Food Bank in my ward. This is more support than other councils provide. Furthermore, almost every primary school in the borough receives funding for breakfast clubs, which as a teacher is so important to our children in their focus and education when they're at school. Over 800,000 has been secured to fund spaces for children in areas like Cheltenham and Persimmon to do holiday activities, something which we all know can be stressful for parents and carers to find money for, especially during the long summer holidays. Through Active North Tyneside as well, our excellent leisure and sports facilities, such as the parks and North Shields, provide support and schemes for people who might need them, a service which is immeasurable in terms of getting people fit and healthy or improving somebody's mental health. Whilst we are already doing a lot, we are constantly looking for more opportunities and funding to support our residents, and we'll look to the North East Combined Authority and national government to provide this. We will absolutely continue to work with local disability groups as well to ensure that their voices are heard. The national government's decision to remove the PIP element from the recent bill and increase the standard rate of universal credit is the right one, but we can never be complacent when it comes to supporting our residents and driving our local economy. The review by Stephen Timms will provide residents with a welcome chance to air their voices as well, so residents should be encouraged to keep an eye out for when this will be open. Thank you.
Again, I don't see anyone else indicating. So if I can ask Councillor Johnson to exercise his right to reply.
Thank you, Chair. You know, I thought the Councillor Bones might have learned his lesson from the mayoral election when he came third in the two-horse race, that the slow march towards reform was not the way for his party to go, but it seems that he hasn't learned that lesson at all. We'll always stand up for our residents and we'll always try and get the best deal for what our residents need. These are some of the most vulnerable residents in the borough, and the Labour Party were proud to stand up for that. Thank you, Chair.
And I'll go to the vote. Can I have those in favour? That's 46-4. Those against? That's 8. Thank you. That means the motion is carried. Now go on to motion 2. And can I invite Councillor Graham to move this motion?
Thank you, Chair. Tackling violence against women and girls is a priority for our statutory Safer North Tyneside partnership. North Tyneside Council is proud to be a white ribbon accredited organisation with a vision to end male violence against women and girls. The Safer North Tyneside partnership is required to have a community safety strategy which underpins the work of the partnership for the coming 5 years. The current strategy is in place until this year, when a new strategy will be adopted by full council. A revised community safety strategy is currently in development and will take into consideration the new Mayor's priorities and those included in the Northumbria Police and Crime Commissioner Plan 2025 to 2029. A priority in the strategy and the accompanying partnership plan for 25-26 is to prevent violence against women and girls. The strategy will be further shaped through working with local specialists, which will include the North Tyneside Domestic Abuse Partnership and the Police and Crime Commission's Violence Reduction Unit. The government plans to publish their new Violence Against Women and Girls strategy in the summer, and any recommendations will be included in the revised community safety strategy. In addition, the domestic abuse strategy was adopted in January 2025 by the Safer North Tyneside Partnership. And the vision is to reduce the prevalence of domestic abuse across North Tyneside and ensure that victims, their children and families have the confidence to report it and seek support and provide support and services to effectively minimise the short and long-term impact of domestic abuse on victims, their children and their families. Furthermore, in our education setting, North Tyneside ensures that our local schools have appropriate resources and support to deliver education on healthy relationships, including sexism and misogyny. This includes supporting schools to confidently deliver the revised July 2025 Relationships Education, Relationships and Sex Education and Health Education statutory guidance. The new guidance includes a dedicated section on addressing sexual harassment and sexual violence with significant new context to position RSHE as key to the prevention of violence against women and girls. This includes a focus on building relationship skills from the start of primary school. The content on staying safe online has been comprehensively updated to cover the risks around exposure to pornography and misogynistic influences and a range of other related risks face young people today. It is intended to bring the draft community safety strategy to the Overview and Scrutiny Coordination and Finance Committee for their consideration and comments. While the intention is sound, in our opinion, that the review of services is outside the scope of the committee and it's best placed that they feed any concerns into the statutory Safer North Tyneside Partnership. I hope that I can rely on the whole chamber to support this motion. I believe we can do much for women and girls in this borough. Females account for 55% of victims. The majority of offenders are male, 77%. So please think on that when you take your vote. I move this motion.
Thank you, councillor. Have you got a seconder?
Yes, it's Louise. I'm seconding the motion. I'd like to speak, please.
That's fine.
I'm seconding this important motion and urge all in the chamber to support it as it seeks to help eradicate violence against women and girls. North Tyneside Council already has a strong record on promoting equality and protecting women and girls. Being part of the White Ribbon Initiative, it already plays a major role in educating and promoting solutions to this issue. I believe that this motion will help make council a champion and ultimately ending violence against women and girls in North Tyneside. This motion also supports our national government's aim to halve violence towards women and girls within 10 years. Violence against women and girls is a stain on our society, and we all have a part to play in purging this crime from our borough. The societal cost of violence against women and girls is estimated at £40 billion annually, and this can't continue. It is not only the financial cost to our society, but the effect that the violence has on the lives and emotional well-being of survivors. Females who experience violence report profound and lasting impacts on their physical and mental health. These effects include injuries, chronic pain, and increased risk of developing mental health problems. Additionally, women and girls may experience lifelong difficulties in relationships, together with low self-esteem and potential substance abuse as a coping mechanism. We cannot even begin to quantify this devastation on survivors. Much is being done by our Police and Crime Commissioner, Susan Dungworth, and we commend her for prioritising this issue as one of her key objectives in the 4-year Northumbria Police and Crime Plan released this year. As a woman who has lived experience, I commend the elected mayor on her proactive approach. I know that if this motion is supported, that she will develop a comprehensive and tailored strategy with both survivors and experts in this area and appoint a champion to amplify the voices of survivors. In addition, it is critical that our young people receive relevant education on healthy relationships so sexism and misogyny can be eliminated from our communities. We must educate our young people so we see lasting and significant change. Our young people are our future, and it is they who will champion and help end violence towards women and girls if they receive the appropriate education. The safety of our women and girls must be prioritised by council, as this will ultimately create a more secure, equal and harmonious environment for all residents of North Tyneside, and this motion is a significant step to achieve that. I trust everyone in the chamber will support this motion and there will be a consensus. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I now invite the members to speak to the motion. Councillor Bartoli.
Chair, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion. I have previously circulated to some of the members opposite, but there is a copy which can be circulated.
Have you got a seconder for your amendment, Councillor? Councillor Ian Collins. As it's just been circulated, I will give a couple of minutes just to have a quick look through and make sure that you understand what the amendment is.
Chair.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm not willing to accept this amendment. It changes the tone completely of our original.
It's not really up to Councillor Graham whether she accepts it or not.
Just interrupt as usual and be rude.
Right, thanks, Councillor.
It changes the tone completely. It is not then about women and girls.
Councillor
And so
Bartoli hasn't moved the amendment.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Councillor Graham has no right to speak here.
that's enough, okay? I've asked you to just hold on because you're not just speaking out and I'll invite you to speak and that's when you speak, okay? Sorry, I'm not going to get into discussion or an argument because we've got too much business going on tonight. I decide to accept what I'm saying or, that's up to you. But that's the rule, okay? Thank you. That's forever. Right. So now we've more about Councillor Bartoli. Right, Councillor Bartoli, if you'd like to bring forward your amendment.
Thank you, Chair. I'm moving an amendment to what is undoubtedly an important motion, which seeks to strengthen our borough's response to violence, but not just against women and girls, but also against victims, including men and boys. This amendment removes none of the original asks of the motion. We continue to call for a comprehensive strategy. We continue to support the appointment of a champion, and we continue to back education in our schools and a full review of the council services. What we've done is something that I believe everyone in this chamber should be able to support. We've made the motion more inclusive because violence is not selective. Violence does not care about gender, age or background. Yes, we of course acknowledge that women and girls are disproportionately affected by domestic and sexual violence. We absolutely must continue to tackle that. But we also know from the ONS and Northumbria Police's own data that 61% of victims of recorded violence are men, which is, after all, the focus of this motion. Young men are statistically the group most likely to be assaulted in our streets. Our Labour Police and Crime Commissioner's plan recognises violence against women and girls as a key priority, and rightly so. But it's striking that there is no parallel priority for men and boys, despite the overwhelming evidence that they are often the victims of serious physical violence. This selective focus feels more performative than practical, headline grabbing rather than truly reflective of need. A policy grounded in compassion and evidence would not ignore the largest group of victims of recorded violence. This amendment isn't about diminishing anyone's experience, it's about broadening our compassion. It's about refusing to pit one group of victims against another and instead saying all forms of violence is wrong and everyone deserves to be protected and supported. If we are serious about prevention, we cannot ignore the root causes of male-on-male violence, peer pressure, gang culture, toxic masculinity, and social isolation. These are all the same environments that also foster violence against women. So to tackle one is to help tackle another. And it's not just a Conservative perspective. Labour MPs such as Jess Phillips have repeatedly and rightly spoken out on violence against women, but she's also acknowledged the need to engage boys and men in the conversation, not only as perpetrators, but as victims too. In her own words, we need to have conversations with boys and men, not just about their behaviour, but also about the harms they suffer too. Male suicides, male victimisation, the pressure on boys to be violent, these are all part of the same cultural problem. Similarly, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, launched an initiative to challenge male violence in all forms, including violence towards other men. He stated, to end violence against women and girls, we must also challenge male violence in all its forms. But sadly, we often see a disconnect between Labour's words and actions. Just 2 years ago, Angela Rayner told Labour conference that a party would lead a zero-tolerance approach to violence against women. But many Labour-led councils, including Manchester and Nottingham, have since been criticised for failing to act on known risks to women's safety, such as drink spiking and inadequate nighttime protections. Promises are made, headlines are grabbed, but policy outcomes rarely match the rhetoric. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, promised to make tackling violence against women and girls a key mission. Yet just this month, his government announced that police numbers will fall by 1,500 across England and Wales. How can we claim to be serious about making streets safer for women or anyone while cutting frontline officers? We should not be engaging in narrow politics, especially when real people of all genders are being assaulted, harassed and traumatised in our communities every day. Policies must be grounded in evidence and shaped by need, not driven by headlines. This amendment doesn't try to erase the original intent, it strengthens it. It brings our borough together and says we will support all survivors, we will educate all children, and we will review all services to make sure no one falls through the cracks. Let's not divide or prioritise some victims over others. Let's lead with integrity and protect everyone in North Tyneside, women, men, girls and boys. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bowen, would you like to second this?
The second and reserve the right to speak, Chair.
Does anybody want to speak on the amendment? Councillor Wallace.
Chairman, thank you. I have no hesitation in supporting this amendment. I think that the council should have a comprehensive strategy for addressing violence, whether it involves men, women, girls or boys. I fully accept that with regard to domestic violence, women are usually the victims, but that is not always the case. Men are sometimes subject to this awful abuse too, and they should not be ignored. I think it'd be very important, therefore, if the strategy is extended to include men and boys, including the appointment of a champion for them as well. In the name of equality, I think this is really important that we embrace this problem, to look at it for all victims and survivors. Thank you.
Councillor Matthew. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Based on the logic of this amendment, if there was a motion presented to full council about tackling homophobic violence, the Conservative group would propose a motion demanding action against heterosexual violence. I remember when many of the members opposite voted for a ban on conversion therapy. The idea that you can't support this motion, the original motion, I just find just ridiculous.
Councillor Murchison, go on.
Thank you for the opportunity. I would like to oppose this motion and tell people that we should actually be supporting the first motion. We can't support this motion because statistics shows that 1 in 4 women in England and Wales will experience abuse after abuse in their lifetime. Every 3 days, a woman is killed by a man, and often partner or ex-partner. Let's not forget that here in England, a minister, Kate Kevington, an MP, was abused by her husband, Andrew Griffin, meaning that violence does not exclude anyone. Violence against women and girls is a systemic issue rooted in inequality, misogyny, attitudes. It demands both local and national actions. And engaging survivors, as was said by the first speaker for the first motion, we need a women and girls champion in connection with the white ribbon that we are already doing as North Side. It is a great idea because the similar roles are being done by Manchester, the borough of Manchester, and by London. And it has actually driven policy and change. Early education to women and girls and men, yes, of course, with boys, we can say they need that kind of education. But let's not forget that this motion cannot be driven to be changed to mean otherwise. It's women and girls who are actually more affected by violence. They are more affected, and this is what we should put into consideration. And this motion, I will not support this motion, and I urge all the members to not support this motion because it's actually driving the attention from women. Thank you.
Councillor Newman.
Can I against amendment from Louis Bartoli? I want to focus about this. Women and girls are more vulnerable and fear of judgment. So they're more dependable to their partner. When you help this woman, it means you help their children.
Sorry, Councillor Newman. I'd like to bring you in now. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chair. Al. That better? Fantastic. Thank you, Chair. I won't be supporting the amendment, but I do want to thank the members opposite for bringing it because you're highlighting a very important thing here. I've spoken for a long time on this council about my children. I'm a very passionate father, and I've witnessed my daughters be victims of some horrendous actions perpetrated by some very unsavory people out there. And the motion as unamended is worthy of our consideration. Likewise, the content of your amendment is worthy of its own motion. And I'm pretty sure if a motion of that substance was to come to the chamber, we would agree to it. But as it stands, I think we do have to focus on very specifically on violence against women and girls. And that's why I don't want to amend the motion, because we really need to focus on that. You are highlighting a very important problem with, root causes of male violence, gangs, that type of stuff. And I think it is worthy that we look at that as well. So I do want to thank you for bringing it, but I think everybody in this chamber wants to tackle violence against everybody. But as the motion as it stands, I think it needs to be unamended so we can highlight specifically the experience of women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Just in response to Councillor Newman, just to start with, I think he's maybe misunderstood the amendment. I understand his point, but this amendment doesn't take anything away from the initial motion. I think suggesting that we come back with the same wording and that would get a different result in 2 months' time, delays in 2 months' time what could be progress on this important issue. I completely support this amendment. There is a real risk that when people like Councillor Graham turn a blind eye to issues around men and boys, they become further isolated and radicalised. We need to approach violence in general. To reject this amendment would be to say to men and boys across this borough that we don't care. This authority only cares about certain kinds of violence, and that isn't the kind of message that we should be sending. This amendment removes nothing from the original motion. It only adds to it. To vote against this amendment is actually to turn a blind eye to all violence against men and boys. And if the members opposite can stomach that, then shame on them. Thank you.
Councillor Scoggin.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to respond to what Councillor Thurloway said to begin with about comparing this to homosexuality. A heterosexual is not assaulted in the street for being heterosexual, not assaulted for their sexuality. I don't understand how he's made that comparison. Clearly, the Labour Party didn't listen to or understand what Councillor Boyd said when he moved the amendment. The majority of victims of recorded violence are men, and I would say that to ignore the majority of victims of recorded violence is probably offensive, but not as offensive as some of the comments that I've heard from Labour councillors tonight. In particular, I would like Councillor Mzingwa to retract her claim that women and girls are more affected by violence than men. And I'd like to say that to a young lad who's been assaulted in the street, that he shouldn't be as affected as a woman. I don't know what that means, but I think she should retract that or she will regret that completely. Thank you.
Councillor Carl Johnson.
A point of personal explanation. Just what Councillor Scargill says, probably the vast majority of men are not attacked because they're men. I would put it to you that the vast majority of women and girls who are attacked and who suffer violence and domestic violence, that is because of their gender.
Councillor Cole Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. To suggest Councillor Graham doesn't care about men and boys is frankly shocking. I know she absolutely does. Chair, Councillor Newman stole my thunder a bit, if I'm being totally honest. If this motion comes back, if all of the additional words that the Conservatives put in come back next meeting to support a motion on tackling violence against men and boys, we will absolutely support that. And to suggest we don't support men and boys is quite frankly ridiculous from the opposition. This is a motion about violence against women and girls. To suggest we need to tackle this issue. Of course, violence against men and boys absolutely needs tackled. But this was a motion to outline that specific issue. If you want to bring a motion in future about violence against men and boys, we will absolutely support it. But we'll not be supporting this amendment, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Chair. If you double the size of a group with whom you wish to do some constructive work, and you're working with a limited resource, as we all are in councils, it's inevitable that you'll diminish the impact of that work. The priority, which is implicit in and intrinsic to the original motion, is essentially about an imbalance of power. That's the situation where so many attacks against women and girls, that's where they're based. It's an imbalance of power, with the attacker being the more powerful. I see this as being the first thing that we need to address. We can come on to amended motions in future days. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Joanne Sharp.
Yeah, sorry. I think one of the things for me that the focus on the original proposal and the motion is around the intimacy of the relationship, around that when women are subjected to violence, the intimacy usually is subjected to violence in a domestic violence setting, and that someone who's got an intimate partner. The issues and the percentages, as I understand them, I'm sorry, I haven't got my phone near there, but the context of which this motion is then presented is sorry, I don't know if I need to. Sorry, is that a little bit better? Yeah, sorry, I do apologise about that. So the percentage that, as I understand them and read them, and I am just saying this off the top of my head, that is being presented here is in a different context to what the original proposal was made. And as Councillor Lott says there, it's about the dynamics of the power in the intimacy of that relationship. Most men, as I understand it, who are subjected to violence, which is completely unacceptable, is presented in this circumstances in a different context.
Thank you. Councillor Charlie Gray.
Thank you, Chair. I think this amendment feels like the embodiment of something you see on social media every year when it's International Women's Day or when's International Men's Day. We can talk about things at different times. I think it's been said by multiple members. If a motion came forward about violence against men and boys and issues faced by men and boys, that would be, I think, a good thing for council to discuss. The way in which domestic abuse affects men differently to how it affects women is an important item of discussion. But to try and, I think, negate the very specific conversation that this motion is designed to have is sad. If, in the logic of the Conservative group, if we are talking about violence, are we ignoring victims of other crime? I don't think we are. But if we can't have specific discussions about things at council, then are we not ignoring everybody about everything else? I am involved in the trade union movement, and I have sat in multiple conferences and meetings and had heard the testimonies of young women in the workplace around being grabbed by men, shouted at, leered at, followed after work, followed around shops, bitten by male customers and clients, being stalked to their home addresses, threatened on social media, and that is not the same testimony as comes forward from young men around their experiences of violence in the workplace. These are important discussions to have, but I think the way in which the Tories group have brought forward this amendment has been designed to try and whip up a certain type of politics. Young men and boys, we're seeing increasingly, are being radicalised by misogynistic elements online, and that is coming across all schools, all social settings, and is increasingly entering the workplace as well. These are discussions that we need to have, and we can have these discussions separately around the impact of violence on women and girls and on men, because we are able, I think, as a council to have that nuance and that discussion. We aren't ignoring people, and I think to suggest so is insulting and frankly childish.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd now like to ask Councillor Graham to have the right to reply on the motion.
Well, as the mother
On the
of,
amendment, sorry.
as the mother of 3 fine young men, I do take what happens to men and boys very, very seriously, and also a grandmother. We're committed to tackling this epidemic of violence against women and girls, and I say women and girls, and it is a priority for us, and it's a priority of one of the 5 key objectives of the Police and Crime Commissioner, and we will work in that way to ensure that that happens and that they're safe from violence, which are perpetrated in the main by men. Thank you.
I'll now go to a vote on the amendment. Those in favour? Going across the chamber. If you have anything to say, you put it through the chair. Disrespect me, but don't disrespect the chair, right? If you're not happy with the chair, that's fine. Do not call across the chamber. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you. I'd made a note of a little comment that I just thought I would sit back with until Councillor Scargill has jumped in.
Sorry.
It's interesting
Point of order, Chair.
Actually, councillor Bones, the point I want to make is a challenge to you. Can you explain
Point of order,
what
Chair.
you meant when you challenged my colleague and said, if you don't retract it, you will regret it? What did that mean?
Chair, you
Intimidating
treat both sides
behaviour.
equally here. You're not treating both sides of this chamber equally, Chair.
On a point of
They-
order,
they-
Chair.
They can say
Everybody-
whatever they want, yet our side can't say anything without.
Excuse me, councillor.
Sorry, on
You
a
need
point
to
of
display-
order,
you
Chair.
need to display some parity, Chair.
On a point of order, Chair. A vote has been taken. The result has not yet been declared. Yet councillor Cruddas has been allowed to make a speech which is not allowed under the Constitution. However, both times now when this has happened, and I pointed out, you have shut me down and not the members opposite. As chair, constitutionally, you are obliged to apply the rules of the procedure in this chamber equally. And so far this evening, Chair, it does not feel you're doing that.
Thank you. Right, we'll go on to the continue with the vote, which we've already been cast at this moment in time. Which is those against the amendment 45. So, and if you can go for the amendment, is 8. So the amendment falls, so go back to the substantial motion.
Recommending moves a vote, please, Chair.
So we'll go to the vote on the motion. Thank you. (53) for, none against. The motion is carried. Just before we go into the third motion, I would like to just try and calm it down a bit. I'm trying my best here. People are shouting out across the room. I cannot deal with watching people shouting out and also controlling the meeting at the same time. If you want to speak, put your hand up and I will come to you. Same. Sorry? I'm actually looking at the door to try to not highlight anybody as it happens. But if you take that, that's up to you, councillor. I'm telling the whole committee, the council chamber tonight. I can understand how it gets a motive. I understand both sides. But all I'm saying is, if you shout out from either side, it causes problems. So if you just indicate, and then I'll take them at that. Thank you. So we're now on to motion 3. Can I invite councillor McAlpine to move the motion?
Thank you, Chair. This motion represents the concern in town halls up and down the country about the sidelining of elected councillors from local planning decisions. The Planning and Infrastructure Bill significantly increases the amount of delegated planning decisions which bypass the traditional committee of local elected representatives. Organisations like the Local Government Association have brought forward concerns reflected all across the political spectrum. Specifically, they state, and I quote, "The democratic role of councillors in decision-making is the backbone of the English planning system." They go on to say that many councillors stand for election on the basis of the role they can play in positively supporting the growth or protection of the environment and community in which they stand. And finally, the LGA say that removing the ability for councillors to discuss, debate or vote on key developments in their localities could erode public trust in the planning system and in local government itself. The recent consultation on delegation rules advocates a two-tier approach. In practice, this could mean that developments up to 50 are waved through quickly and quietly with no democratic oversight, and on the higher tier, which could run into many hundreds, will only be voted on under very narrow circumstances. This motion affirms North Tyneside's commitment to democratic oversight of planning decisions and calls on the government to reconsider this dilution of local decision-making. But in the event it refuses and these decisions are taken away from our planning committee, it provides another democratic means to make residents' voices heard. And I hope on that basis, all members will be able to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Do you have a seconder? Thank you. Is Does anyone want to speak to the motion?
I have an amendment that's been submitted.
As there is an amendment being passed around, I'll just give you a couple of minutes to have a quick look at it before we go on with the debate. Right. Councillor Samuel, let's go to you. Put your amendment forward, and do you have a seconder? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I have to say at the outset that we certainly very much support the need to allow councillors to comment on planning applications. We are fully with the Local Government Association and its concerns to ensure that that takes place. But the motion Conservatives put forward this evening is flawed. It's right that 95% or so of applications, as it happens at the moment, as happens in all authorities up and down the country, are delegated to officers. It would be impractical and unprofessional to involve elected members in run-of-the-mill planning disputes about a new garage extension or the kind of that level of that kind of thing. The members should have the right to comment on applications. It should be involved in strategic or larger applications when it comes forward. We have a system that works within this council, and we already have good practice which complies with most of the suggestions in the bill. In fact, going forward, the bill would in fact have very little difference, if any at all, in the way that planning operates within this council, because we have processes where members can request that motions are taken to committee. They can request speaking rights to individual things, and they can submit, even if they don't wish to go that far, they can submit individual submissions and views through as part of the normal planning process. Moreover, the other flaw in the motion is that the planning committee is a regulatory committee and it's not a scrutiny committee. It follows from that the planning committee should decide what mechanisms exist for its councillors to give up to ensure that that consultation and inclusion of local members takes place. It's not a matter for the overview and scrutiny committee to decide, because planning is not a scrutiny process. So due to the flaws in that motion, we have put forward the motion that's in front of you, the amendment, sorry, that's in front of you this evening, that seeks to effectively accept that we all want to make sure that councillors have the right to be involved in individual planning processes, but do that in a practical way, because you cannot have councillors involved in every single planning application. It's not feasible, it's not practical, and it's not legal.
Yeah, move to debate now on the amendment. Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you. During a previous discussion, Councillor Johnson had said that the party opposite were willing to stand up against this government when they thought they were wrong, but it seems like once again they've reverted to type and they're back to just following the lead from Westminster. Planning is one of the most tangible and emotive aspects of our local democracy. When residents express concerns about a new housing development, a large-scale commercial proposal, or changes that may affect a conservation area, they don't write to Westminster, they contact us. Local councillors are their voice, and their voices must not be silenced. I think what this amendment has sought to do is to try and pussyfoot around the issue instead of facing it head on. And it's particularly disappointing that it's come from the chair of the planning.
Councillor Graham.
Don't know if Councillor Bartoli understands, but large scale planning applications always come to planning committee.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if Councillor Graham has read the bill, but that is very much the issue that we're debating this evening. The amendment would give the nod to the Deputy Prime Minister to concrete over great swathes of North Tyneside Greenbelt without as much of a vote of the Planning Committee. The concerns have been expressed by the LGA in terms of democratic oversight and in terms of giving much of that decision-making power to combined authorities rather than constituent councils. That is where the concerns on the original motion come from. This amendment does nothing but guts that, gives the nod to the government to do whatever they like with North Tyneside green space, and completely removes the role of councillors. We won't be supporting it, obviously, and we'll continue to stand up to protect our green space.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pranlock.
Thank you, Chair. If the planning committee is to function efficiently, then the last thing it needs is for the current, I believe it's something like 98% of planning applications are dealt with by officers. The last thing it needs is to be sitting for 2 or 3 days to consider every single recommendation. The planning committee is there, and rightly so, to consider strategic and contentious. A strategic plan, that's why one of the reasons why the planning committee has so many members, to take input from a wider cross section of councillors to determine strategic decisions. Thereafter, it's what I've labelled, and I hope there's no fuss about it, the contentious planning issues, those that excite a public interest, those that might have an impact on neighbours, for example, and the procedures are there to allow members of the public, interested parties and councillors to have their say on it. That's essentially what the planning committee is and should be about. I think this amendment is particularly well constructed. Thank you, Chair.
I can't see anybody else indicating to speak, so I'll ask Councillor McAlpine to have the right to speak before we go to the vote.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly to say that there was never any suggestion that every application should go to the planning committee, as clearly that would be very impractical. This amendment neutralises the original objectives of the motion, which represent legitimate concerns by organisations like the LGA. The important decisions won't come by a planning committee, and on that basis, we'll be supporting it.
In that case, now we will go to the vote on the amendment. Those in favour? That's 44 for and 8 against. So the amendment is carried. So now we debate the amended motion. Is anyone who wants to speak to the amended motion? Is indicating to speak. Nobody has indicated, but you have the right to reply, Councillor.
Apologies. I think it seems that the speeches I've heard from opposite are seeming to misdirect the public, shall we say, and possibly no doubt are going to lead to a social media post saying that councillors can no longer speak in planning applications. It's completely inaccurate. There'll be very little difference, if any at all, to what happens at the moment. On strategic planning applications, you will still have the right to come along and speak. Yes, you will. So that's it, really. I mean, you're just trying to misdirect people.
Right, we now go to the vote on the motion as amended, sorry. 44 for, 8 against. The motion is carried. Thank you. That takes us to motion 4. And I'd like to invite Councillor Bones to move this motion.
Thank you, Chair. On this side of the chamber, we understand the frustration felt by residents in areas like Dudley, Camperdown and Killingworth, who are expected to make long, inconvenient journeys to Howden, often through congested traffic, just to dispose of household waste responsibly. This is an issue local Conservatives have been working to solve for years. This mayor has, however, managed to turn frustration into anger with her plan to spend £100,000 on a feasibility study for a brand new tip in Killingworth. This plan is not just expensive, it's unnecessary. There are already a perfectly good facility just minutes away in Brunswick. The only reason our residents can't use it is political posturing. The last Labour mayor refused to even ask Newcastle City Council to negotiate an access deal. This mayor has splashed out £100,000 without asking the same question. If this was about delivering better services, we'd be sitting down with Newcastle City Council and working out a sensible arrangement for shared access, just as other authorities manage across boundary lines every day. But instead, the mayor is intent on burning through taxpayer money, causing environmental disruption, increasing traffic and undermining local amenity, just to avoid picking up the phone. I mean, how scary can the Labour leader of Newcastle City Council be? We have to ask, what is the real price of this stubbornness? £100,000 on a study today, millions more on construction tomorrow, all of it for something that could be solved by mature cross-boundary cooperation. This motion is about common sense. It's about protecting our green spaces. It's about spending public money wisely. And above all, it's about listening to residents who don't want to see their community turned into a dumping ground, literally. The recent by-election result in Killingworth should be a wake-up call for Labour. We need to be protecting our green space and putting forward practical solutions for everyday problems, not spending taxpayers' money on vanity projects like the Mayor's new tip. I hope members across the council will join me this evening in opposing this unnecessary new tip and demanding proper negotiations to give our residents access to Brunswick instead. Thank you, Chair.
I suppose you have
Point of order, Chair. The Constitution states quite clearly that members must be truthful. At best, Councillor Bones misled council. At worst, it was a barefaced lie. I'll ask him to withdraw the remark when he says the last mayor did not contact Newcastle City Council. We did over and over, and he's been told in this chamber time and time again.
Chair, when I directly asked the last mayor in this chamber whether or not she would contact Newcastle City Council, she refused, and that's what I'm making reference to in my speech.
Do you have a seconder for your motion?
Second it, reserve the right to speak.
Can I now invite you to speak to the motion? Sorry, Councillor Graham.
Thank you. I'd just like to put the truth of the matter so everybody can hear. The council has one household waste and recycling centre, the HWRC in the borough. This is operated by sewers as part of an integrated waste management contract and situated in North Shields, next to the A19. Last year, the site accepted over 11,600 tonnes of waste, which is 46%, and recycling at 54%. This is 12% of all waste accepted by the council last year. The site operates from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the evening every day, apart from Christmas Day. And 40 appointments can be booked by residents every half hour, meaning that 960 appointments are available across the day. Data extracted from the booking system shows that the 5 wards with the lowest number of appointments booked at the HWRC per household are Whitslade, Long Benton and Benton, Camperdown, Killingworth and Forest Hall. From time to time, we hear from residents, and indeed our very own late impassioned councillor Muriel Green, about the ability to use the Brunswick site owned and run by Newcastle City Council. One of the first tasks I did about 5 years ago on taking the environment portfolio was meet with my opposite number, Councillor Jed Bell, in the Civic Centre at Newcastle City. This was about a reciprocal agreement about their residents in the East End of Newcastle using our Howden facility and our residents in the Northwest using theirs in Brunswick. Unfortunately, it was a negative response from Newcastle. We have tried again subsequently with Newcastle several times, but have been met with the same reply, the latest only a week ago. So in line with what residents have been asking for, we have commissioned this feasibility to see if such a facility in the northwest of the borough might be possible. This is to have an HWRC, whilst at the same time it would increase recycling, reuse and repurposing for the public good. This is in line with the waste management strategy and 5-year plan for waste. Importantly, this was also a mayoral pledge to have this feasibility study for the northwest of our borough. It was in the medium-term financial plan approved by council in February 2025, if you remember. As for political posturing, any facility would be on an industrial or brownfield land and not be scaremongering our residents. I also object to the pejorative word tip. It is a household waste and recycling centre, and as such holds valuable materials and goods that can be extracted and reused for our residents. I don't know what you're laughing for, Councillor Bones. You're very rude. We have had warmly received pubs where people can buy goods cheaply and maintain the circular economy. We're stopping things going to landfill, and we will soon be reopening a reuse shop and also have myriad schemes to pick up curbside recyclings for repair, pat testing and redistribution to those that need them. Vape tubes, clothing banks, soft plastics and many other recycling points of material, all mapped on the council's website. Waste is a valuable resource and should be treated as such. Once the evaluation is received, we will be consulting with the public as to their views, and they are the ones that matter, the people in Killingworth and the surrounding areas, and this side will be voting against this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Residents in the northwest of the borough have understandably brought up the distance they have to travel to the current household waste recycling centre in Howden, and are the least likely to use it, as stated already by my colleague Councillor Graham. This council under Mayor Clark will make absolutely no apologies for listening to residents in the northwest and funding this feasibility study to look into building our own household waste recycling centre in the northwest, a major pledge made by the Mayor in May. The only reason our Tory colleagues opposite have submitted this motion is that they seem to be slightly annoyed that we have pledged to do this and are getting on with it. We cannot overstate how much we have had discussions with Newcastle City Council. In fact, just yesterday myself, I did pick up the phone to the deputy leader who I know, and he made it very clear that it was still the case that Newcastle City Council will simply flat out refuse to let North Tyneside residents use the Brunswick tip. And this position will not be changing. So leading residents to believe this is even an option is simply untrue. It also seems utterly bizarre to me that a councillor elected to North Tyneside Council would essentially be against us looking to increase the services provided to our own residents in our own borough. It is also the case that they have spread disinformation regarding the tip during the recent by-election. To reassure residents, the feasibility study is looking into sites that are industrial, brownfield, and as far away from residents' houses as possible. We absolutely understand that residents would not want a household waste recycling centre right on their doorstep and would not get into a situation where this is the case. In bringing this motion to council, the Tories are showing how little they think of residents in the northwest, as they are stopping investment in their area in favour of something which simply will not happen, no matter how many times they try to write it in a leaflet or bring it in a motion to council. This is why we'll be voting against the motion tonight.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dr. Scoggin.
Thank you. I just want to put on record that so far I haven't heard anyone say that this tip is not going to be built in Killingworth. And given that the mayor stood at Killingworth Lake when she announced this project, if I was living in Killingworth, I'd be getting increasingly concerned that I was about to be living next to a tip. Thanks.
Councillor Bondin.
Yeah, just on that point, yes, about residents' concerns. Yes, it did lead to a lot of conversation in the run-up of the by-election. I just want to draw attention, we have mentioned the leaflet. The leaflet that was put through doors contained 2 quotes. One was attributed to the Yorkshire Post, which was residents' protest over putrid stink from waste tip, which is making their lives a misery. A quick sort of Google search into that does indeed lead you to that article, which is from the Yorkshire Post from the 15th of July 2022, which is relating to a BioWise site near Hull, which is it composts thousands of tons of garden and food waste, which I don't believe is anything relating to the proposal for the Northwest. The second quotation was Stinky Howden saga runs on as locals claim plant smells like rotten cheeseburgers. Again, a quick Google search on there. The headline is actually Stinky Howden sewage saga rumbles on as locals claim plant smells like rotten cheeseburger. So a slight but important difference in there. That's an article from the 5th of August 2020, where a resident called Bob Walsh claimed the mystery smell coming from the sewage treatment works in Howden had left him gasping for breath. After a thorough investigation, plant owners, funnily Northumbrian Water, couldn't locate the source of the smell. So again, I think the two quotations there don't actually fit the narrative of the leaflet that went out. So I just wanted to raise those as a point. Either the quotations have been put on the leaflet by accident without proper checking. Like we say, indeed, the Chronicle Live website contains the word sewage and that's missing from the leaflet, or it's been put there knowingly despite not accurately representing the main story that the leaflet's telling. I just think it leads into a wider point with, there's been quite a lot of debate in this chamber tonight. Indeed, places like the National Centre for Social Research, they published a recent study that shows the public sort of distrust in politics. And we all know that it exists. Everybody in here does. We can actually do a bit in North Tyneside, but to try and change that by sticking to facts when we're communicating with residents, even if sometimes we've got to tell residents things that they don't want to hear, let's please stick to facts. I'm sure everybody in the chamber will agree it's what residents of North Tyneside deserve. That's just my little bit of input, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Matthew Thurley.
Hey, Chair, as a resident and councillor for Howden Ward, I can reassure the residents in the northwest of the borough that Howden does not smell. And if I was a resident living in the northwest of the borough, I'd be pushing, I'd be lobbying the council, I'd be lobbying the cabinet, I'd be lobbying the elected mayor to get on with this and open this household waste recycling site, because it's a great asset for the people of Howden. It's just down the road, it's fantastic. And I think from the Conservative group, it's just political grandstanding. They know the answer from Newcastle City Council. So actually, they're just whipping up frustration where there is no frustration. And I think, like I say, if I was a resident, I'd be lobbying for this. I'd be contacting the mayor, saying, get on with it.
Councillor Brian Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Really, the only thing I've got to say is when I've been on the campaign talking to people in Killingworth, it seems that they're more interested in where was a consultation before the decision was made to have a feasibility study. Why no one that I spoke to has asked or has shown any interest in having a facility in Killingworth or in anywhere near Killingworth. The North Tyneside facility is a very good facility. It's well used and could probably be more used. But the feedback I was getting on the doorstep was, one, where is this going to be? And two, no one wants it. Why does anyone want this? So in my understanding of things, all I'm really saying is we're about to, or may have already spent £100,000 to look at a feasibility study that the reality is the people of Killingworth tell me they don't want. So that's it.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Clomer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm just going to say one thing, really. So it's interesting the point you've just made, because many residents have told us that they want a feasibility study to look into the opportunity to develop a new recycling centre in the northwest of the borough. And we've received that feedback over a long period of time. So this feasibility study is being done in direct response to residents in the northwest of the borough. So I really would request people to stop putting out misinformation and lies. It's really irresponsible. Thank you.
Councillor Lewis Bartoli.
Thank you, Chair. It's unsurprising to see that the Labour Party locally seem as bad as the Labour Party nationally at negotiating deals I find it impossible to believe that Newcastle City Council cannot come to some kind of arrangement with this council to share facilities. And it just seems like if they say no, we put the phone down and maybe try again in 6 months. I would suggest they perhaps negotiate a little bit more better.
Councillor Steve Cotts.
Thanks, Chair. Just speaking as one of the councillors for Camperdown Ward, it is something which comes up regularly with residents in the area around the fact that there isn't access and any waste that they do have to get rid of. They have to go all the way to Wallsend to use the facilities there. It's something which has come up, and I'm sure you'll hear it come up. People will be raising the issue around the access to facilities and sort of waste transfer stations and all the things. So it certainly is an issue in the Camperdown Ward. Obviously, I can't speak for Kilnworth Ward, but it's in Camperdown Ward. It is something that residents regularly bring up. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. There's no other indications to speak, so I'll go back to Councillor Bones for his right to reply.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, where to start? I agree with Councillor Smith that no one in Killingworth asked for a new tip, and I also agree with him when he says there was no consultation. I think for once there was a member on the Labour benches opposite speaking some sense. Councillor Graham says that calling the tip a tip is scaremongering, so I really do wonder what she thinks our residents call the current Howden site. I mean, could she be more out of touch? Probably not. I'm glad that both Councillor Graham and Councillor Johnson have clarified that it's Labour councillors in Newcastle that are blocking our residents' access to Brunswick Tip. That will be of little comfort to the residents who are now going to have to live near a smelly tip in the northwest, thanks to this mayor. But at least we can now tell them that it's Labour councillors to blame for that. Councillor Graham also said the tip will be built on brownfield land, as if that was some sort of defence. Residents in Killingworth have seen the local plan map. They know that Killingworth has many brownfield sites surrounding it, and yet the Labour group opposite still refused to rule out one of those sites being used to build the tip. And finally, I want to thank Councillor Bunyan for echoing residents' concerns about the period stink from the site. I hope that he will join us in voting to protect his residents from that smell and instead focus our resources on getting access to Brunswick and getting a proper deal from Newcastle's Labour councillors. We'll be voting for this motion. Thank you.
Right, we now go to the vote. Those in favour of the motion? There's 8 in favour and 44 against. So the motion falls. Thank you. Now go on to motion 5, and I invite Councillor Bartoli. I'm not sure. Yourself?
This motion seeks to retain the 2-child benefit cap, a policy that is not just financially necessary, but grounded in fairness, responsibility and sustainability. We seek to make the views of this council clear. The difficult decisions Labour take today will define not only the future of the welfare state, but also whether we continue to live within our means. This is not an issue that is dividing the government. Sorry, this is an issue that is dividing the government, with Labour's own child poverty task force recently stopping short of scrapping the policy because it will cost between 1.3 and 3 billion a year, a recurring cost with no clear way to fund it, and one that could jeopardise investment elsewhere. Even Labour's most senior figures understand the fiscal reality. The Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner has called for pragmatism. The Chancellor Rachel Reeves has so far refused to commit to removing the cap. And that's because it's clear the welfare budget already exceeds 250 billion annually. If we are serious about reducing poverty long term, we must also be serious about affordability. Kemi Badenoch recently put the issue bluntly, saying families on benefits should make the same responsible decisions about having children as everyone else. Most working families plan their finances carefully. That's a principle of fairness, and it's what this policy protects. But it's absolutely clear families are not left without support. Even with the cap in place, there's a wide safety net in place, particularly for low-income and vulnerable families. Some examples include every family, regardless of size, receives child benefit. currently £25.60 a week for the first child and £16.95 for additional children. Families still get the universal credit standard allowance and the child element for the first two children, worth £269.58 per child. Free school meals are available for all infants and for all children in low-income families. Children from low-income households receive free prescriptions, dental care, free eye tests and support for NHS costs, travel costs. There's continued access to 30 hours of free childcare for working parents of 3 and 4-year-olds, and this is being expanded to include 9-month-olds. Families receive help with housing costs throughout the housing element of universal credit, and this is based on need, not the number of children. And finally, here in North Tyneside, the council provides targeted help, winter coats, school uniform vouchers, holiday meal support, and access to affordable food and food banks. All of this support remains in place with or without the cap. So the question is not should we help families, as we already do, and rightly so. The question is, should we extend unconditional cash support to every additional child, regardless of circumstances, when we already offer significant targeted assistance? Internationally, the answer has been no. In Germany and Sweden, two of the most generous welfare states in the world, child benefits are universal, but still capped and structured to avoid dependency. In Australia, benefits taper off after the second child and are tied to employment or job-seeking conditions. Their approach is one of mutual responsibility, and we could do well to follow it. The current policy works to enforce the principles that welfare is a safety net and not an incentive. It ensures that families plan it responsibly and the state remains focused on helping those who genuinely need it most. Scrapping the cap might sound compassionate, but it risks being unaffordable, ineffective, and ultimately unfair to the working taxpayers who fund the system. I urge councillors on all sides to support this motion and send a clear message to the government, not out of ideology, but out of a shared belief in fairness, responsibility, and sustainable welfare. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, councillor. Have you seconded that? Thank you. Now open to members to speak on the motion. Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Chair. I will be voting against this motion, but first I just want to quickly address some of the language that's been used within it, specifically the claim of a culture of dependency. This implies that those who claim benefits are on some level scroungers. So yeah. Thank you, Chair. I'll start again. Yeah, so this implies that those who claim child benefits are on some level scroungers and after handouts from the government. And I find that type of claim unworthy of this chamber. Now, I've worked my entire life from the age of 17, and I'm lucky that my daughters are now at the age where they're starting to leave school and look to their own lives. But I remember, and a number of people will remember me talking about this in this chamber, when they were young and I was serving in the British military. My wife couldn't get a job because of deployments, and therefore I was the only person working. Now, without child benefits, it would have been impossible to raise my children on the income that I received at that time. Now, I wanted to find out if any of this had changed. So I went on my laptop and I looked at the current pay scales for the British Army and I looked at the benefits calculator. What I found is that a similar soldier, even with the historic increase in soldiers' wages that the Labour Party has just announced, it would still be impossible for that soldier to actually support a family. Now, I want to ask the members opposite, do you think a serving soldier claiming child benefit for 3 children are scroungers? Are they somehow guilty of a culture of dependency? And it's not just soldiers. I had a look at quite a number of other places, teachers. I looked at retail workers. I looked at single parents, 2 parents working, part-time workers. You know, I looked across the whole breadth. And what I found is that with the cost of living crisis created by your government, it is virtually impossible for huge amounts of people in this country to support a family on their wages. The thing which has become very apparent is that the problem is not on irresponsible parents, it is on wealth inequality. It is on the fact that the cost of raising a family has outstripped wages. Now, this has been a long-term issue and it's been recognised for a number of years, and it's one of the reasons why I personally think that the Blair government brought in child benefits in the first place. But I know that some people in this chamber might well believe that it's tough luck and families just have to deal with it. But that is incredibly short-sighted. because we not only have to consider that for many, wages no longer are sufficient to support a family, but because we ultimately have to recognise that far from being an economic burden, children are an essential investment. In a society such as ours, the birth rate will become essential for future prosperity. We have growing industries and an ageing population, and children are our future innovators, workers and carers. And in my opinion, the 2-child limit is a major contributing factor to the lowest birth rate since records began. Now, that might not seem important, but this will become a serious problem in 15, 20, 25 years' time if it's not addressed, resulting in difficult decisions as we address workforce shortages and care capacity for our ageing population. Morally, we must also remember that these children did not choose to be born into low-income families, and as a society, we must be judged on how we support those less fortunate than ourselves. Every child deserves dignity. Every child deserves to be supported, not only just the first or the second child, but all. I also have to point out that life, as many of us in this chamber will know, is completely unpredictable. Families don't always grow by choice. Twins and triplets can be born. People can have well-paid jobs one day and be made redundant another day. Illnesses can come out of nowhere, and none of us will know when a bereavement will occur. The 2-child cap doesn't address poverty, it exasperates it. It doesn't increase opportunity for our youth, it stifles it, and it doesn't create better value for money. In the long run, it costs us. It costs us in health, it costs us in remedial education, it costs us in emergency support, and more importantly to me, it costs us in missed opportunities for our youth. Members, I completely understand why the government hasn't been able to lift the 2-child benefit cap, but it remains my sincere hope that as soon as it is economically possible, that it will be removed. Members, I will be voting against this motion, and I recommend everybody in the chamber do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mutingwa.
I'm also speaking against this motion, and I will not be bullied. I'm speaking against this motion because it's a motion that pushes children into poverty. Children do not choose to be born, but they are penalized for being a 3rd child or a 4th child. How is that even fair? Low-paid workers, and they are the ones that are they are the ones that are going to be personally affected by it, especially single parents. They are vulnerable families and ethnic minorities. How can that be right? These families, they also want to send their children for gymnastics. They also want to send their children for swimming lessons and stuff like that. So the population reduction in the United Kingdom is quite appalling. And like Andy said, in 20 years' time, we will not have workforce to do the work. And the other thing that I want to talk about is about the statistics. According to Joseph Rowntree Foundation, lifting the cap could actually lift 250,000 children out of poverty. Wouldn't that be just right? And we cannot force families to choose between food, heating, and pushing them into more poverty. The government have duty, and we have duty to protect the families and not being unfair for children who are just born. They are not the one who's responsible for being born. They don't choose to be born. So I urge colleagues to actually vote against this motion.
Councillor Walker. No.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I too will be voting against this motion because I believe the 2-child limit significantly contributes to child poverty, pushing tens of thousands of children into poverty since its implementation in 2017. Today, 75% of children in poverty live in working families. And
We all know child poverty has a long-lasting effect, with children and parents going without meals, living in freezing homes, not being able to join in activities for the children with friends, outgrowing their shoes and wear worn clothing that don't fit. These are all visible signs of poverty, and the stigma sticks for a lifetime. I cannot support this motion because it significantly increases health inequalities, supports low-paid work, and creates long-term unemployment.
Thank you, Councillor Sparrow.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think it's time for quiet reflection on the motion. I've always preferred evidence-based approaches to policy. And the evidence to me is quite stark. When you look at the latest figures in the United Kingdom, there's 4.5 million children living in relative poverty. When you look at the northeast of England, there's 120,000 children living in relative poverty. When you look in this borough, there's a particular constituency out of all northeast constituencies that's ranked 8th for child poverty, with a poverty rate of about 33%. That's the evidence. That's undoubtedly evidence. And I would contend there's a correlation between the last 14 years of government policy from that side that's caused the problem. When you look at the child benefit cap, and it's not just the child benefit cap, it's the wider austerity agenda that they've sponsored. When you look at sure starts, the sure start schemes were improving opportunity for young people and combating poverty. So I think we need to keep the evidence base in context when we're deciding poverty in this particular chamber. There's a compelling case to remove the cap. There's a moral case. I think we'd all support that. There's a political case. Certainly I would support that. But there's also a fiscal case. Councillor Mislingham mentioned 250,000 people. It's actually 350,000 people that would be young people that would be removed from poverty straight away and in an instance. Certainly from my point of view, Chair, the current levels of child poverty, they're nothing to be proud of. And certainly it's a legacy that I wouldn't be proud of. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Early.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to truncate some of what I was going to say because my colleagues have already made some of the points I was going to cover very, very powerfully. I think the first thing to say is that Labour locally, regionally and nationally is already taking what measures it can to reduce child poverty. Locally, through our Poverty Intervention Fund with school uniform grants, food vouchers and other measures. And regionally this week, we had the launch of the North East Mayor's £28 million action plan to tackle child poverty. And at a national level, the government has begun its free breakfast club rollout, its extension of childcare provision, and increases to the national living wage. However, child poverty rates in the North East are still rising. The latest figures from the Department of Work and Pensions as of 27th of March suggest that 31% of all babies, children and young people across the North East region were living below the poverty line over the 3 years to 23-24. This is up from 30% over the 3 years to 22-23. Faced with these figures, what is the response from the party opposite? It is to suggest that families living in poverty are responsible for their own plight because they are either irresponsible or work shy, and that the 2-child benefit cap be retained indefinitely as some form of punishment or deterrent by keeping families and particularly children in poverty. This seems to me a positively Dickensian approach to the issues of poverty and child poverty. I wonder if in future we should look forward to motions from the opposition lauding the return of workhouses and the return of the poor laws. It has been repeatedly calculated that lifting the 2-child benefit cap would be the single most effective measure to reduce child poverty. And as my colleagues have already said, lifting 350,000 children nationally out of poverty immediately and reducing the effects of poverty on a further 700,000. Therefore, I'm pleased that the Labour government is now considering lifting the cap, but only when the public finances allow. It is not looking to take reckless spending commitments in this regard, but it does at least seem to be considering it
as a alternative measure to reduce child poverty when it is affordable. As the suggestion that the retention of the cap is necessary to prevent a culture of dependency, it's noteworthy that North East Child Poverty Commission figures show that of the 20,550 households in our region affected by the cap since its introduction, 52% are in fact working families. Children brought up in poverty are more likely to be adversely affected by physical and mental ill health and reduced opportunities in later life, meaning failing to tackle child poverty is more likely to lead to increased future dependency on the state, and not less, as the motion wrongly suggests. As to making responsible decisions about family size, as has already been said, both in the UK and North Tyneside are facing rapidly aging populations and falling birth rates. The number of people aged 65 and over in the UK is projected to rise significantly from around 12.7 million in 2022 to 22.1 million by 2072. And total fertility rates fell to a record low in 2023. Women are currently expected to have 1.44 children in their lifetimes, well below the replacement level of 2.1 experts say is required to maintain a stable population. So I'm not sure about the logic of retaining measures which would continue to suppress birth rates. In North Tyneside, as at April 2025, 1,050 families and 3,630 children were adversely affected by the benefit cap. Surely, as a local authority, we should be supporting measures to lift our families out of children out of poverty, and not bringing forward motions condemning to a future trapped in a cycle of endless poverty. For all these reasons, I will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Carl Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at both parts of the motion, I think, any councillor that wants to work with the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Jim Montague's not a big scary person. You can just approach him. He's happily work with the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to ensure the council is doing everything that it can. We set up working well hubs long before those things were popular, to try and get people back into work. And it's, as I said before, it's an absolute core of Labour values that we want more people in the best and high paid job possible. I'm not going to go over the figures because my councillors, colleagues such as Spower, Early and Matingwa have talked about them, but the Resolution Foundation report's absolutely right. But what it also states is that it would cost about £10,000 per child nationally to raise those 400,000 plus children out of poverty. That is the single most cost-effective tool in the government's armoury to raise people out of child poverty. So if the Tories are opposite me telling me they don't want to take the most cost-effective way you can raise a child out of child poverty, that's fine. But I didn't come here to keep people, I didn't get elected to keep people in child poverty. The Tories want to force children into poverty. That's down to them. Be interesting to see how our new Reform Councillor votes, bearing in mind Nigel Farage's position is to lift the 2-child cap.
Councillor Matthew, way.
Thank you, Chair. I think on this issue, there's a very us and them attitude, and I think it's been going on for quite a long time. It's people who don't work against people who do work, and I don't think that's not an accident. That's a very deliberate political decision made by certain people, and that's fine, except if you ignore the unprecedented increase in in-work poverty under the last government. When the Tories talk about making work pay, people don't believe you. They lived through the last 14 years. You didn't make work pay. Actually, pay in real terms went down, cost of living went up substantially. And I think that's why reform is breathing down your neck to be essentially the opposition to the Labour government, because people don't believe you. You come to this council and act all high and mighty as if people didn't live through the last 14 years. People don't trust you. And I think when you bring motions like this, they just think, well, what's the point of listening to the Tories? Because we've experienced them. We know what they're all about. So, I think for your political future.
Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair. We've just heard Labour councillor after Labour councillor line up to say, let's spend more on welfare, because fundamentally that's what Labour does. It gives handouts, not hand-ups. And to come back to one point from Councillor Newman, those who have twins and triplets don't have the two-child cap applied to them. That is very much an exemption for those circumstances. With regards to child poverty, the percentage of children living in absolute poverty fell under the Conservative government, as did the number of children living in workless households. Ultimately, work is the best route out of poverty. And we're proud of the record, which saw 4 million more people in work during that time. Families on benefits should have to face the same decisions as those in work about living within their means and responsible decision-making based on personal circumstances. If you can afford to have 3 children, have 3 children. If you can't afford to have 3 children, don't expect someone else to pay for them. I think it's completely unsustainable to have more and more being spent on the benefits with no solution as to how to pay for it. That's what the party opposite is offering us. We need to get the benefits bill under control. That's what this motion does, and it's a shame the party opposite won't be supporting it. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Brian Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just let everybody know the interest of what I'll be doing. So I'm very, very torn on this. And the reason is I believe in fiscal responsibility, but I also believe that there's a crisis in the population that we need to support that development. I disagree that the population is dropping. I would say the birth rate is dropping. And what we need to do is encourage people to have kids. And if I was going to spend money, I'd rather it wasn't on weapons, it was on kids. So that's my view on things.
Thank you, Councillor Nutt.
Yes, I want to reply the comment statement from Liam Bones. If you say the statement like that, so more young people with working, right? They don't have any interest to have any kids. So like my colleagues say, will be lost population in this country.
Thank you. I don't have anybody else indicating to speak, so I will go back to Councillor Bartoli for his right to reply.
Thank you, Chair. It's clear that passions have run high during this debate. I thought the most interesting comment came from Councillor Bones at the end, where he said, if you can't afford 3 children, don't expect others to pay for them. And the party opposite actually let out an audible groan at the thought that you shouldn't be able to pay for your own children. That I think was a shocking response. Not one of the party opposite mentioned at any point personal responsibility, making decisions for yourself, looking after your own children, paying for your own children, taking responsibility for your own decisions. The socialist utopia that they all seem to think exists, where we can all just continue to pay for more and more welfare, is exactly what's driving this country into bankruptcy. There's no doubt that the welfare bill has to be tackled, and its irresponsible policies, like just allowing people to have as many children as they want and letting other people pay, that's driving our welfare bill through the roof. I'm disappointed that the party opposite won't support this motion, but I can't say I'm in any way surprised.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd now like to go to the vote. (46 against, 7 for). Therefore, the motion falls. Now we'll move on to motion 6 against Councillor Bartoli. Is it Jade Bartoli? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. The motion I'm bringing forward today is designed for this council to investigate supporting businesses as much as possible through the much anticipated restaurant week. I am asking council to investigate the possibility of allowing free parking in discounted metro. Our businesses need this more than ever. North Tyneside businesses is struggling, with North Shields having 23% of their shops unit vacant, Wallsend at 14%, and even Whitley Bay, even with all its restoration work, at 10%. The North East has the highest economic inactivity rate in the UK at 28.4% between January and March 2025, well above the national average. These aren't just statistics, they represent lost jobs, fading communities, and weakened local morale. Council data shows the business rates parking is their top concern. This can be the council's way to show that they have their back and are listening to their concerns. I ask you to support me in passing this motion for local businesses.
Thank you, councillor. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, Chair, I'll second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Now open it up for the motion for debate. Councillor Hannah Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. The Labour Group will be voting against this motion. Restaurant Week is a great event in our borough, showcasing our incredible restaurants and driving our local economy. As a council, we are incredibly supportive of the event and will do everything we can to make it a huge success. It should be said that evening parking is already free throughout the borough, and we are always looking into ways that we can make parking free during certain periods of time, such as in the lead up to Christmas. We've also got some of the cheapest parking rates in the North East. Furthermore, residents can get the bus for only £3, so there are a number of options they can use to travel to local restaurants, obviously along with walking and cycling as well. All of these things mean it is not difficult for residents travelling to local restaurants during the week. The financial cost of this motion has to be taken into consideration. Nexus would expect us as a council to pay them back for any discounts, and there would be a loss of income from the parking. In times where we all know money is tight, doing this would affect our libraries, our community hubs and our leisure centres, highly rated services which provide an incredible service for our residents and a major part of the Mayor's manifesto, which was of course only voted on in May. So it's for those reasons we'll be voting against the motion.
Thank you. I don't have anybody else that's indicated to speak. Oh, sorry. Councillor Johnson, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we'll always support our local businesses, and there's free parking in different places right around the borough that people can access restaurants from. Parking is free after 8 PM. We'll also support that. The party opposite talked a lot about personal responsibility just before. Yeah, constantly bring motions to this council, no idea who you're going to pay for them. Probably try to take some personal responsibility and let know you're going to pay for a motion first.
Oh, Councillor Mulvan.
I find it very interesting that we have a motion which looks for support for Restaurant Week, and then it's linked to empty shops. Are all these shops going to start up as restaurants in this week? You know, this is a big question. And when it comes down to sort of parking, the opposition not think that, you know, if they want to produce free parking, it would be nice if they actually produced a budget with the free parking within the budget. I mean, they haven't produced a budget for years now, and they keep coming back. And I mean, if we look at the motions here, we've just discussed the benefit cap. Well, the people on the benefit cap can't afford to go to the restaurants, so the restaurants only seem for the better off, you know. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Are they sort of dividing and conquering, you know? I mean, most of Shire Moor, for example, can't go to a restaurant. You know, they're looking if they can afford to go to the fish and chip shop with the prices in there, you know, let alone go to a restaurant. I'm sorry, I'll not be supporting this.
Councillor Dr. Scahill.
Thank you. I think over the last few years, we've seen the amount of disruption caused by this council implementing sustainable transport schemes, the amount of disruption that's caused to local businesses. They're still struggling to get over COVID and they've had this put on them. Why are we talking about dividing and conquer? This is a motion for free parking for our local businesses, and we're laughing about it and making jokes about dividing and conquering. I don't understand why the party opposite cannot get on board with supporting free parking to help customers get to local businesses in our borough. It's very strange.
Councillor Mullen. Councillor Mullen, sorry.
Yeah, just I've read this motion and it states quite clearly North Tyneside Restaurant Week, which isn't just time out. So I think a lot of people come here and every year they've asked for suspension of time out parking. You would have to suspend the whole of North Tyneside paid parking for what your motion says, which is about £113,000. Where's that in a budget?
Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair. The financial implications are quite clear on the cost of that for the entirety of North Tyneside. It's not a Tynemouth specific thing. It's to support businesses across North Tyneside. I mean, the idea that the members opposite cannot find £37,000 when we found £100,000 in a budget for a tip that we might not even get. Just to think about building a tip, there's £100,000, but to give our restaurants a much needed boost, we can't find £37,000 is absolute nonsense. And for Councillor Mulvena to say that people in Shiremore don't go to restaurants, I think he needs to get out more, to be honest.
I certainly haven't got anybody else who's indicated to speak, so I will go back to Councillor Johnson. You got that right?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think we all agree we've got a fantastic, diverse and growing choice of restaurants here in North Tyneside, which I know many of us enjoy and visit regularly. More and more foodies are writing about what our borough has to offer, whether it's blogs on social media or in the local and national press, and we need to capitalise on this. This is a challenging time for the hospitality industry. This has been compounded in this borough with the impact from the disruption of work to introduce cycle schemes that has had a detrimental impact on many of our local eateries, particularly in our coastal wards, where we have the biggest concentration of hospitality venues. Whilst the financial implications of this motion indicate a ballpark figure of 37k in terms of loss of revenue from car parking charges, this is a relatively small amount for the benefits it will bring in, particularly given that we've just heard that £100,000 is to be found looking at commissioning a study into a new tip in Killingworth, which we agree on this side of the chamber is absolutely unnecessary. Let's all support this motion, give our restaurants a boost, show them we are pro-small business and sort out free car parking and discounted metro tickets and have a record-breaking restaurant week in 2025.
Councillor J. Bartoli, you have your right to exercise reply.
Thanks, Chair. You found £100,000 to look into a tip residents don't want. They paid for a bus station that's a failure. Time after time, this council fails for giving the residents and businesses the help that they want. I came with a motion to help the struggling local businesses in North Tyneside, and I find it disgusting. They seem to care more about vanity projects than actually helping local businesses. You're ignoring the point of it being business's biggest concern is parking. It's disgusting the way you laugh at all these local businesses, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
Thank you, Councillor. And now go to the vote. Eight for, 45 against. The motion falls. Thank you. We now go on to motion 7, which is Councillor Bartoli again. I'm sorry, is it Councillor J. Bartoli? Oh, you sent it. Sorry. Councillor Lewis Bartoli is for
Chair. I'm hoping this motion promises to be a little bit less divisive and a little bit more collegiate than the last two I've proposed. Recently, the government announced a major package of support for electric vehicles, including a £650 million electric car grant and a further £60 million investment in charging infrastructure. Importantly, £25 million of this is specifically earmarked for on-street and cross-pavement charging solutions aimed directly at supporting people who do not have driveways or access to off-street parking. That funding is available now and it's competitive, meaning councils that act swiftly will be best placed to benefit. North Tyneside must not be left behind. As more residents switch to electric vehicles, whether to reduce running costs, meet environmental goals, or simply keep up with changes in the car market, we need to make sure that our infrastructure keeps up as well. A major barrier for many local people is simply where will they charge? That's why this motion is about more than just cables and charging points. It's about making sure that people who live in our terraces, flats and older properties which make up a huge proportion of this borough, are not excluded from EV transition. And also, we're not starting from scratch. A previous electric vehicle charging working group was set up by this council and produced valuable work, but it hasn't met since its initial report. Now is the time to reconvene it, bring in all parties and make the most of the expertise we already have in this chamber and in the wider community. So the motion proposes re-establishing the working group with cross-party representation, identify priority locations for on-street charging, especially in the areas without private driveways, work with officers to prepare funding bids, taking full advantage of national schemes, explore partnership opportunities with housing associations, local businesses, or innovative tech companies already delivering similar solutions in other parts of the country. In cities like Oxford and Coventry, councils have trialled curbside charging bollards, lamppost chargers, and even wireless charging pads. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need the will to act and the readiness to apply. This motion seeks to respond to a growing need in the borough with a fair, sensible, and future-proof approach. I hope that all members will join me in supporting this motion so that North Tyneside can lead and not lag in delivering the infrastructure our residents deserve. Thank you, Chair.
Have you got a seconder for the motion? I thought you had, yeah. Does anybody want to speak to the motion? Councillor Hannah Johnson.
Thank you. This motion is asking the council and officers to do work that has already been done, so we will be voting against it. In 2023, a cross-party group met to discuss electrical vehicle charging and reported to the council towards the end of the year. That, of course, included members of the group opposite. This was a large piece of work where we joined up outside organisations as well to plan for improving our electrical vehicle charging infrastructure within the borough. Following these meetings, the group then brought a report to Cabinet at the beginning of 2024, which agreed an updated version of the North Tyneside Zero Emissions Vehicle Strategy, which is on the website for everybody to see. Furthermore, we are already looking at the funding provided by government and the North East Combined Authority. From NECA, we are working with them to get some of the £15.8 million they have been awarded for the local electrical vehicle infrastructure levy funding, and have found funding opportunities to either replace or put new electrical charge points in 9 of our car parks. As you can see, this motion is asking us to do work we've already done and therefore is relevant, so we will be voting against it.
I don't have anyone else indicating to speak. So right reply.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little bit surprised the party opposite have refused to support this motion. Councillor Johnson said that we reported 2 years ago, and in this kind of technology, 2 years is a long time, and that report is already outdated. I was part of the initial group that wrote it. I recently went to the LGA conference and spoke to a number of councillors and council officers from areas across the country, and it's clear that this council is lagging behind what other councils are doing and is lacking in ambition, and I think that's been demonstrated clearly tonight. This was a great opportunity to reconvene a group that hasn't met and is out of date and could have provided some useful information for this council. But once again, we're going to leave it to others to strive forward while this council is left behind. It's saddening to see what's happened tonight. There seems to be no ambition from the party opposite, no thinking outside the box. They just want to continue doing more of the same. I'm disappointed from this side of the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll now go to the vote. We have 7 for and 45 against, therefore the motion fails. That moves us on to item 10, which is questions by members of the council. First question I have on the paper is from Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair. Will the Mayor confirm when she expects her first Mayor Listens event or equivalent to take place, how often they will be held, and any other avenues that she is exploring to make herself directly accountable to our residents?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I think your question seems to be based on a bit of a narrow concept or assumption about how I may or should listen and engage with residents. And I'm sure you're aware there are many ways in which we can effectively listen, engage with residents. I've spent a great deal of time over the last 3 months getting out and about and meeting with residents, communities, voluntary sector organisations, businesses and our multi-agency partners. I have therefore in effect already been highly actively engaging with our residents in what I would call meaningful ways and being highly visible and directly accountable. I am also currently working with officers to produce a new engagement strategy, however, and I want to ensure that we do get that right, that it is meaningful and appropriate to people. In the meantime, I would just like to say there's also a significant amount of engagement underway currently around and through the big community conversation and the draft council plan. It's important that we take the opportunity to genuinely listen to feedback from that engagement process to inform what will become the key priorities of the final council plan, and that is what this council will be delivering over the next 4 years. So that's a really important and effective way residents can engage and influence what we'll be doing and delivering. And I would encourage residents to do so. And there's varied ways in which they can do that, one of which is through the online system on North Tyneside Council website, Have Your Say, North Tyneside Voice. Thank you.
Councillor Bones, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Chair. There's a difference between engaging with hand-picked groups of residents, as the Mayor has been doing, and holding open forum questions, as the previous Mayor did. Can the Mayor confirm if my residents will be able to attend an event in the next 6 months to ask her questions directly?
Thank you, Councillor Bones. I can assure you I will be using whatever engagement methods I believe appropriate to effectively engage with residents, communities, the voluntary sector, businesses and partners. And as I say, we're currently reviewing and updating the engagement strategy. Thank you.
That takes us to question 2 from Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask the Mayor how many displaced Monk Seaton High School pupils are to be housed in the new porta cabins located at Marden High School, and what is a suitable time frame to be educated for them to be educated in such accommodation?
I believe Councillor Phillips is answering this one.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. We had a little bit of a conversation before about semantics. I just want to draw your attention to porta cabins. These aren't porta cabins, these are high quality modular accommodation. It's a bit of a difference, because when I think of porta cabins, I think about the type of porta cabins that I sometimes got taught in 30 odd years ago. So just when we're talking about semantics, I think that's important not to call them porta cabins. Marden High School are in the process of admitting an additional 30 students into both years 9 and 10 for September 2025. And a further additional cohort of up to 30 pupils into year 9 in September 2026. I would envisage that the whole school will be on site for the accommodation will be on site for up to 3 years from September 2025.
Councillor Johnson, have you got a supplementary?
Yes, I have. Thank you, Councillor Phillips, for your response there. We're getting feedback from many parents, basically, where they've got children moving from year 8 to year 9. They're very unhappy. Instead of being able to walk to school, they are being dispersed across the borough, thus incurring unexpected travel costs. How is the council assisting parents with these costs?
Which particular costs are we talking about here?
We're talking about the travel costs in relation to the pupils in year 8 and year 9.
Right. Can I take? I'll ask officers about that, because I'm not quite sure exactly where the question is. But in fact, I'll probably try and speak to you to get a bit more detail about this one, get a bit more accuracy in your response. Is that okay? Thank you.
Thank you. We now go to question 3, which again is from Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You're going to be sick of me tonight. Can I just ask the question about planned admission numbers in middle schools being lowered as a result of the decision to close Monk Seaton High School? Or planned admission?
Sorry, Councillor Phillips, were you responding to this one? And did you hear the question?
For all our middle schools as foundation trust schools, the governing body is the admissions authority and they are responsible for setting the planned admission numbers.
Do you have a supplementary? No. We now go on to Councillor Johnson on question 4.
Does the Mayor agree that parents of Year 6 pupils in middle schools will quite rightly enrol in Year 7 in a high school, enable them to start high school with all of the new entrants?
Again, Councillor Phillips, I believe you answered this one.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. There are 4 middle schools in the borough and they provide education for pupils from Year 5 to Year 8. At the end of Year 8, pupils will transfer to either Whitley Bay High School or another secondary school within North Tyneside. This will be administered through the annual admissions round, which opens in September each year. Parents are, of course, able to choose to apply for a place in Year 7 when their children are in Year 6, whether they are either in a primary school or a middle school. Indeed, parents are entitled to apply for a place at any school at any time through the in-year admissions process.
Councillor Johnson, you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Phillips. Has the Mayor considered the potential catastrophic impact this will have upon middle schools, and will she commit to a comprehensive and frank review in the provision of education for these pupils?
Yeah, the council will remember that in previous cabinet reports we have given not only a firm commitment to the 3-tier system, but we've also done impact assessments which have been delivered in various cabinet reports. And one of the things we're really clear on is that we're going to work together with the schools to ensure they are viable and sustainable.
Again, Councillor Johnson, question 6. Question 5, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Can the Mayor outline the criteria for entry into Whitley Bay High School sixth form?
Again, Councillor Phillips, I believe you're answering this one.
You're going to start talking, yeah. Right, Whitley Bay High School is a foundation trust school or their own admissions authority. The school's sixth form admissions and entry policy for 2025 is available on the school website.
Councillor Johnson, do you have a supplementary?
No supplementary. Thank you, Councillor Phillips.
Now go to question 6, which is Councillor McAlpine.
Thank you, Chair. Can the Mayor set out how the Labour government's new national housing targets will impact the development of a new local plan? And in particular, how many more houses will North Tyneside Council be expected to find space for? Thanks.
I believe Councillor Carl Johnson's answering this one.
244 per year above what the last Conservative government had to target at.
Yeah, supplementary.
Yeah, do you anticipate being able to fulfil the uplift in the housing target using brownfield land exclusively?
No.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, you've answered.
I've said no pretty clearly, Chair.
So, sorry. So now we go to question 7, which is from Councillor Dr. Scargill.
Thank you, Chair. The government has outlined plans to effectively nullify the referendum on the mayoral system in Plymouth, regardless of whether residents vote in favour or not. Can the Mayor confirm she will work to block any attempts to get rid of the North Tyneside mayoralty without a referendum supporting it?
Councillor Mayor. Mayor Karen Clark.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. As I stated in response to one of the public questions earlier, the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill introduced to Parliament on the 10th of July 25 proposes the abolition of the committee system and the prevention of the creation of any new local authority mayors. However, the bill and the guidance published alongside the bill makes it clear that there is no intention to abolish the existing 13 local authority mayoralties. These local authorities, such as North Tyneside, that have existing mayors, will have the option to continue with an elected mayor or transition to a leader and cabinet model. But under both the current and the proposed law, any change to North Tyneside Council's current form of governance would require a referendum. The outcome of the referendum would have to show clear support for any proposed change before it could be implemented.
You have a supplementary?
I do, and thank you for your answer. The council may have given the mayor's predecessor the freedom of the borough, but Norma spent 12 years running our estates into the ground, hiking council tax and council rents.
Sorry,
slashing-
councillor, sorry, can I stop
It's
you
a
there?
question.
That is.
Slashing millions on vanity
Sorry,
projects.
councillor,
whilst our roads crumble.
councillor, will you stop, please? Thank you. That has got nothing to do with the question. It's
It is-
not a supplementary question.
It is.
Therefore, I'm ruling it out of order. You cannot continue.
You haven't heard
Thank
the
you.
question.
I'm ruling it out. You cannot continue. Okay?
I
Thank
haven't
you.
finished my question.
Councillor,
It's got a question mark at the end of it.
you either stop speaking now or you take yourself out of the room. I am not going to have this going on every week. Thank you. That takes us to item 8. Sorry, question 8 from Councillor Dr. Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Will the Mayor write to Historic England in light of a new administration which strongly supports protecting our heritage assets, asking them to reconsider their decision not to list New York Forge and instruct our officers to update the local register of heritage assets to include it?
Councillor Johnson, Carl Johnson, I believe you're answering this one.
The New York Forge is a vacant single-storey site at the building of junction of Merton Lane and Brooklyn Terrace in New York. A request was made to Historic England in 2016 to list the building. They considered a range of information, including provided by residents about the building's use and its appearance and condition. The building was not considered suitable for listing. In 2016 and in 2018, it was not nominated for inclusion on the local list. Going forward, there's been no change in historic importance or architectural value of the building since 2016. There's little to no evidence suggests it would now warrant inclusion on a national and local list.
Councillor Scott, do you have a supplementary?
I do, and I think residents in New York would be really disappointed that the oldest continuous forge in the northeast, which is still active today and has trained blacksmiths all over the northeast, is not even getting consideration by this council. I would ask that the mayor, will the mayor write to the chair of planning saying that she strongly opposes any planning application which includes the demolition of New York Forge?
Not sure if those residents were upset in 2016 or 18 when no one nominated it for inclusion in the local list.
Thank you, Councillor. That concludes the questions. We now go on to the chair's announcements. And I'm sure you'll be very pleased to know that I'm not going to say very much tonight, other than I am disappointed in some of the attitudes of some of the councillors tonight. I am trying to keep it in order as best I can. And if you indicate, I will bring you in to speak. However, if you start shouting and waving, I will not. So you indicate and I will bring you in to speak as soon as possible. I was going to go on to say that I have nominated a Tiny Lives Trust for supporting the charity, which I'll be supporting this year, and also talking about some events. However, because of the length of the meeting, I will withdraw that and pass over to the Mayor for any comments.
Thank you, Chair. I will also be brief. Firstly, as elected Mayor, I'd like to officially take the opportunity to formally welcome Councillors Brian MacDonald and Brian Smith following the 2 by-elections held on Wednesday, the 2nd of July. I'm sure you will both work hard for the residents who put their trust in you and who voted for you, so welcome. As I said earlier, I have had a very busy time since taking up office, and I have been getting out and about as much as possible across our fantastic borough, meeting our amazing residents from all kinds of backgrounds, and our communities, voluntary sector, and also meeting with our businesses and partners. I've also taken up my role as cabinet member on the North East Combined Authority and been meeting with the regional mayor, regional leaders. Mouth of Tyne celebrations. I just want to say I'm delighted to hear that this summer's Mouth of the Tyne Festival generated over £1 million for the North Tyneside economy. And I think hosting such a brilliant event in our borough is a huge boost for our local businesses. The weather was kind as well, which was a big bonus. The feedback from residents, visitors, businesses and performers has been overwhelmingly positive, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank everyone involved in the arrangements for the 20th year of Mouth of Tyne. So huge thank you to everyone, and I hope everyone really enjoyed it. North Shields 800 has been so fantastic to have been involved in several of the North Shields 800 events, which, as we know, is part of the North Shields 800 year-long programme of celebrations, and to witness firsthand the pride that the people of North Shields and the wider North Tyneside have in their area. It's been absolutely fantastic and a brilliant opportunity celebrating the past, present and the future of our amazing town. In relation to the council plan, just a reminder, I've already mentioned it, that there is engagement underway through the big community conversation and through the online portal. And I hope residents take that opportunity to influence our priorities and shape that council plan. It is what we'll be delivering over the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd just like now to thank you for your attendance this evening, and also remind you that the meeting the next meeting will now be held on Thursday, the 18th of September 2025, and the meeting is now closed.